everybody. This is Devious, Localz Only podcast. We have a very special guest today, the legendary Asia One. Everyone, round of applause at your home. We got Asia One right here. No easy props.
The
Mighty
champ
Super
is
Bass.
back.
What's good, Asia? How you been?
What's good, my brother Devious? Thank you for having me on your podcast. I appreciate this opportunity to build with you guys.
No, definitely. No, the pleasure and honor is ours. Definitely. We've been wanting to have you, and we feel that it's very necessary. We talk so much about your event and what it means to the popping community. So now it's like perfect to have you on and just kind of break down some history, some knowledge. So we'll get started with more of your history. Kind of like your background, your origins. Where you're originally from. Yeah, we'll start off with that. Where are you originally from?
So I'm from Denver, Colorado, um, born 1971,
Oh wow.
in good company with Tupac and many
Yeah.
other amazing folks that we've had on this earth. And I think a lot of course, when you're born, where you're born, and how you grow up really directly influences, it informs the person you become to a great extent. So, just in a nutshell, I'll say that, and I was just talking to a brother around the way of my neighborhood right now yesterday about this because he grew up in the '60s and the '70s. I said, we both were talking. I said, the '70s was a good time. It was a better time for many people in this country. Growing up and being a young youth, fulfilling my first 10 years in that period of time, when you had a lot of community leaders, you had people like Jesse Jackson. I remember he was running for president, and he had a organization called the Rainbow Coalition, and really, promoting racial equity and also just togetherness. As there was more of a acceptance at that point in time, that you know all these different people that live in the US are all Americans, and we're all together in this. And that sentiment, and everybody, was living at more of a base level, right? It wasn't You didn't see a lot of extremes of wealth and poverty. Everybody just was There was a lot of, let's say, lower middle class, as it was just, blue collar worker families. And that was the type of family I came from. My father was a teacher, and my mom actually, she she stayed at home with us for a while until my parents got divorced. But my dad's from China, and that's another big part of me and sort of my who I am. My dad is from, he was an older man. He had us when he was 55.
Okay.
And then my mother is a woman of European descent from Iowa. She grew
Okay.
up on a really small farm town, really small, like,
Yeah.
talking about like 300-400 people in a town, and also grew up, very base living. So these kind of two different worlds coming together to create like a life in Denver where, neither my mom or my dad was from. And just growing up in the inner city in the '70s and the '80s was, it was a time of, for me again, the coming of age of that period of time, of coming out of, the country coming out of civil rights era, coming out of like the Vietnam War, and the people being freer to express themselves. Freedom of speech was a big thing, and people, you know just the activist culture was alive in this country, and people were feeling like, there was some change happening, right? It was a different time. It's
Yeah.
literally
The civil
like,
rights movement really started.
yeah, it's literally like, what, me and this brother were talking about it yesterday. It's like we took like 10-20 steps back, even from then now.
Yeah.
And anyway, but there was a lot of, uh again, the neighborhoods weren't so segregated, at least in a lot of cities. I mean,
Yeah.
we know also because of land deeds, and the history of redlining tied to property land deeds that basically said who can live in certain places and who can't. And that's a real crazy thing too, that really helps us understand why places like LA are so segregated based on people
Definitely.
groups. But again, there where I was growing up, it was less like that. Um, And I'll say that for me, growing up at a time when you had neighborhood cliques of kids hanging out that grew into gangs, but not in a negative fashion. I mean, I even remember when the Crips came to Denver and pretty much set up. It was before the crack cocaine epidemic, so it wasn't really a bad thing. It was honestly a more organized approach to what we were already doing, and they were really about the skills, like about the skills of dance, skills of sports, the skills of music and everything. So it was mainly like kind of honor if they recruited you into what they were doing
No,
from your neighborhood gang, so or clique or what have you. So all of that changed. Obviously, we saw that change in the 80s with the introduction of crack and all of that. But you know, being through that scene before and then after, and being kind of always on the fringes, someone who you know was kind of always hanging out. I never really joined the Crips, but I hung out with Crips because that was just who everybody, like I said, that was who was in the neighborhood gang in the neighborhood that we were all hanging out in. um and I'll say that, you know um for me, I really always struggled with identity in terms of where I really fit in. I
yeah.
wasn't really accepted. What I learned is that people treat you based on how you look,
Hmm.
and where it's like a human sociological phenomenon is we treat people based on how they look, so we understand what box to put them in and what treatment to give them based on that. And so when you come up and you're a mixed race person, or you don't look like your race or what have you, you tend to be treated differently by society. And I definitely know that me and my brother, we grew up like that because we didn't really look enough Chinese, we didn't look enough a European. We just people really didn't know what we were. A lot of people thought I was Mexican. A lot of people thought he was Native American. And so, when they don't know how to treat you, they just, and we didn't really have many Chinese people really in Denver at that point either. So it was kind of like people would see my dad and they just ultimately assume like we all knew kung fu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And which was all right because honestly, we got a little bit of acceptance that way, even though
Yeah.
none of us knew kung fu. But it just kind of like coming out of that, and for me, really like when hip hop and especially more of the golden era of hip hop and moving into the 90s hip hop, that period was for me a real opening, a renaissance period for myself, because I when I became part of Zulu Nation, and I got really into the infinity lessons they were promoting and talking about the meetings, and really
Yep.
interested in this meeting of the minds, that having these ciphers really with other individuals, where we talked about higher concepts, stuff that we really didn't learn at all in school,
No, I agree.
so because we all went to school with the Eurocentric point of view of education,
Yeah.
so we really didn't know much else other than what we were taught. So this was like an explosion of ideas and growth for myself and a lot of other people at that point. And so again, I graduated in '89, and I decided to open up a hip hop shop in
Real,
a
real
in
quick,
a
real quick, Age. I wanted to ask you, just take it back a little bit more. I
sure.
wanted to ask, like, so you having the parents that you did, were you super sheltered, or like how did you directly, or how did you even end up liking hip hop, or even wanting to get involved? Like, what was your journey to even get to that point? And because I'm sure in high school you were already pretty much, doing your thing, but like, what were you doing before that, and that
Right.
led you to that point, especially having an older
Hmm.
parents, and growing up in Denver, like,
Hmm.
it wasn't. It's not like today where you just turn on your phone or your computer and it's in your face. Like,
Right.
you had to
Well, you
really
got to
go search.
remember, that there's shows, all of those type of shows, like the Dick Van Dyke Show, the Johnny Carson Show, Carol Burnett Show, all of these like TV. And honestly, I remember the first time we saw the Lockers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I still remember me and my brother were trying to imitate, that swan dive
Yeah.
that Don Campbell Lock would do. Rest in peace. I remember there's certain memories I have so clear of being in the basement and watching certain things with my brother and us imitating stuff and just crashing on each other and like just things like that. I think, obviously, I remember when we saw the pilot on an after school special, like it was like, there was always the after school specials that would come on, and you kind of hurry home to watch certain things. And that was really, you kind of like, if you didn't catch it when it came out, you weren't catching it at all. You know
Can
what I
you
mean?
explain what the pilot is, Terry? I know what you're talking about, but like,
Pilot, it was Ozrock was in it, and it was a little high school story about, breaking
yeah,
basically,
yeah,
and these kids, and yeah, I mean, I remember vividly catching it when it came on after school special. So there was things, I mean, we were seeing things. I think that, again, that period of time, like, that was just, it became popular youth culture.
yeah.
Just, it was underground, but it was still popular youth culture. I mean, that's what people were doing in the lunchroom. People were rapping, people were dancing, people were, we used to go to a lot of talent shows, and we used to
Mhm.
go to a lot of, like, pretty much everywhere you go, because everything back then was very localized, right? So all the talent was pretty much, if there was national talent coming through, there was always local acts. So
Mhm.
there was a place called the Rainbow Music Hall that would, you go see all types of different groups, and then there'd always be local groups competing too and doing things like that. I remember going to an event on top of a sporting goods spot in Denver, and it was like a breaking event as
Yeah,
well. So you would see people breaking public. And again, I think from Denver, I'll say this. Now that I really kind of analyze it, and I kind of, when the footage I see again, I think, when you come from a place like Denver, that's really kind of, it's kind of middle of the road, but it's still closer to the west than it is the
yeah,
East Coast. You get, just like, when you kind of study or you think about hip hop hitting the West Coast, when you see, even the word breaking, for example, like, that word in general was kind of misused, obviously, right? Because there's a movie called Breaking. There's things like called Breaking and Entering, like little documentaries. But if you actually watch it, it's a lot of different kinds of dances, all just
mhm,
boiled down, right?
yeah,
It's kind of a look. It's really, at the end of the day, it's inner city youth doing
yeah,
what they're doing. So they could be breaking a little bit, they could be popping a little bit, doing some capoeira, doing some gymnastics, whatever. It's all kind of culminating, right? And I think that that's a little bit what you had in Denver too going on. You had, it was more a lot of routine and performance based stuff, where individually, maybe people, you didn't see as many people go off individually.
yeah.
Like now you see much more, it's all about the individual and the solo. Back
Especially
then it
with
was
the
all about
talent
the
shows,
group
right?
and the routines, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? And the performance element of stuff. So that appealed to, young people, it appealed to kids, it appealed to younger people. um and so I think, seeing things like that. My brother, he was popping a little bit as well. um I came from Park Hill, which is a neighborhood that has more African Americans in it.
mhm,
So honestly, like, I saw more popping than I did breaking. It was a little bit more popular. Um, and again, for somebody like me, I didn't exactly know where I fit in. It wasn't like I was really doing it. I was kind of on the fringes. I was, um, you know, more athletic. Like, I was athletic. I was playing soccer. My mom was our soccer coach. Again, things back then were pretty simple. You
yeah, yeah.
really,
So you said
there
your
wasn't.
brother was doing more. Your brother was more involved with.
My brother was really influential to me. My brother was one of those type of people that was kind of ahead of his time. You always have those people in your city or in your
Mhm.
family that just was like, yo, this dude was before everybody. I remember my brother turned me on to like reggae in 6th grade, and he was
Damn.
deep into like, he was deep into, Aswad and Third World
Yeah,
and Black Uhuru, and he was into it, like that whole dub sound that was
yeah.
was really resonating then. And he was in a group, and he actually played the bass, and he was in 6th grade.
That's
He
dope.
was just like one of them type of people. So he was kind of like the kind of kid that you were just like, he was more comfortable in his skin than I was.
Okay.
He didn't really trip. He was just doing him. Me, I
Was he
was kind of
Belgian?
like, where do I fit in? Like, what am I, who am I? I think, like, for me, I was kind of more on the fringes. I was a shyer person. I was shy. I was, real shy. So when I got it, and I mean, I have really good memories of like middle school, because middle school was that era when, that was for me, that was 80, um, 3 and 84. And, that era was like Prince and the whole, the Prince, like, like what he, everybody was looking like Prince or trying to look like Sheila E. or Apollonia, or, it was kind of like that kind of vibe. It was just my memory of like middle school. Middle school was really cool. Middle school was a lot of fun. We had fun. For me, when I went to high school, it kind of all changed because we were still, that was the era of busing as well, to keep places integrated. So we were still part of that initial busing mandate. We were the last group of people actually that took part in that. And which I think speaks volumes, because I think when you look at people that are my age that went through the mandatory busing, you see that we are different in terms of our outlook because we had a different experience. So, we didn't go to the school right across the street. We went to the school all the way across town. So we went to an all black high school, and it was a historic school in Denver that like some of the Tuskegee Airmen had actually gone to,
Oh wow.
that Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind and Fire had gone to.
Oh wow.
That yeah, we there was a lot of people that actually went to that high school, that we kind of learned about while we were going there. But that high school, of course, coming up at that time, and again, that's when crack cocaine started influencing the areas. And we saw a lot going to high school over there. I mean, it was like in a poor black neighborhood, and it was in a neighborhood of Denver that's a historic neighborhood called Five Points.
Mm,
And this neighborhood is home to they used to call it the Harlem of the West.
yeah.
And it was, a jazz mecca city, because again, you know African Americans could only stay at certain places throughout the US when they traveled. So again, this was a hub of hotels, of music venues, restaurants, what have you, that catered to African Americans, especially performers. So you had Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday. Like, these are just people that would spend time in Denver. So that's why Denver cultivated an amazing jazz scene.
Yeah.
And we were also one of the first cities to have like a Juneteenth celebration,
Wow.
because a lot of the African Americans that came to Denver came by way of Texas, and took that tradition and that history and implanted it in Denver, and had community celebrations because of it. So Denver, even though it was a small city, it was culturally pretty rich as far as the people groups that lived there. Also, the other really interesting thing to learn is that's where the Chicano movement started.
Big.
And like, as far as a revolutionary movement of activists, and that's where Corky Gonzalez is from. And if you go to the museum, the Colorado History Museum, like, you look a lot of that history, and it's amazing that it was just happened there in those streets. And so Denver has a really big Chicano population,
Big time. Yeah.
and also growing up, again, I didn't get enough of that because I was on the north side of Denver. That was I was on the northeast side of Denver. That was on the west side and the north side of Denver. So again, a lot of that didn't coalesce for me until my shop, because opening the shop became like, not, I didn't even really realize I was doing this at the time, but opening it in the part of the city where I did, that was unclaimed, it made it so everybody went over there
And this
because
was right
nobody
after high school. This was
this
right.
was after high school. Yeah, and for me, okay, the thing that happened before I opened my shop that is worth mentioning, that is for me, that kind of changed it, is right after kind of high school, like, I was trying to figure out what to do. I took a little bit of some time off. I had gotten into a really bad car accident. I broke my leg really bad, and I had to relearn how to walk, and it was just one of those unfortunate incidents that I had a different plan. I was going to go to college in the Bay and go live with my dad, because my dad lived in Richmond. He lived in Richmond from 1980 to around 2000.
Wow.
And so I used to go hang out in Richmond a lot. My dad lived around the corner from from the ice cream shop, the record shop, and the store that No Limit had, Master
Yeah.
P had.
Yeah.
So like I had a lot of different things. I was always like, and also spending a lot of time in the Bay,
Hmm.
and was very, very instrumental to me as well, especially during that time. But in terms of what I wanted to do. So I wanted to actually move to the Bay. And so my thing was I was going to go to the Bay after high school. I was going to live with my dad. I was going to go to college in San Francisco at the City College there.
Yeah.
And then once I broke my leg in this really bad car accident, and I basically was like, I couldn't walk for a long time. Then I was on crutches for a long time. Then I was on a cane, and it kind of just changed my trajectory at that point in time. I was like 19, and after I kind of healed up from that, I was hanging out a lot in Denver. I was going to a lot of clubs. Of course, I had a fake ID, and I started going to one of the first clubs. It was a gay club out there called Across the Tracks. And the music at that point, you're talking about like house music was really the club music.
Yep.
So we got a lot of great music. I mean, you're talking about like Little Louis Vega, Mr. Fingers, all of these pinnacle influences coming out of Chicago and New York in the music scene then. And techno was like kind of soft techno was also sort of in the clubs, but it wasn't like the house was very soulful,
Mhm.
and it really spoke to me. I used to love to go out and just go dance in the clubs. And I met a DJ there, and he was from Kuwait actually.
Oh wow.
And he was a very, very worldly individual. This person had, lived in New York, lived in London. He was very well traveled. And for me, come a little, somebody out of Denver who really hadn't gone much further than, South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Minneapolis. Like I never went anywhere else other than where we would get in the car and drive, where we had family members or what have you. So he kind of like really opened me up to a lot of music. He was friends with a lot of the members in native tongue.
Mhm.
He knew them personally from being a DJ and doing music in New York. And he was what was called kind of then a remixer, right? He would take a song and he would remix it. And so he worked on a lot of music, a lot of hip hop and house music, and remixed it. So he was somebody, he was like, we started hanging out a lot. We started going out. And he took me on my first trip to New York. And that was in 91. And that changed everything for me. I mean, if that was also for me, I mean, again, I was going around. I was meeting. I met Camilla from 55 Soul, 555 Soul. I met a bunch of the members of Native Tongue, including De La Soul and them. Leaders of the New School was coming out. The UMCs. It kind of like the underground music scene there, and a lot of the underground dancers at the time, like the Mop Tops. Some of these people I met through him, and the synergy, and also like a lot of the record labels, they all had underground labels. There was like G Street, Priority, Loud. They were all subdivisions of larger labels like MCA or Sony or what have you, and they all had hip hop labels. So everybody was mixing and mingling and just making art, doing art. And also the clothing coming out of that time, was really crazy. Like it was like basically all these old school graffiti heads had gone and created their own clothing companies, and were now putting like really intense messages like "Hello, my name is." I'll never forget this shirt. It was it was the "Hello, my name is" sticker. The first time I ever saw anybody use that on a shirt, and it said Michael Stewart. And I think there was a few other names that they added to them. But when you'd research who these people were, they were people that were killed by the police,
Wow.
right, in the community of New York. So I mean, they were putting these shirts out in 1991. Before anybody, So you saw hip hop was always being used as a vehicle of activism, as a vehicle to bring awareness, and as a vehicle to unite people of color together, united. So for me, it just, it really took off, because before then, hip hop to me before then was like Dana Dane and Too Short and all the stuff that was popular in Denver, like, Houdini. That was my favorite group, right? You know, like, that Run DMC. So we got, of course, we got those, big heavy hitter mainstream hip hop acts,
Yeah,
that were the
commercial
first
leaders
ones
of
to
hip hop
release.
was.
Yeah, Salt and Pepper, like that, all of that stuff was, our hip hop as well. But this to me was something different. This to me was like, whoa, it was it was conscious, it was street, it was yeah, it really resonated with me. So and we went to
I
the
was
new
gonna
music.
ask you, when was that like aha moment, and like that you're like, you know what, this is this
That was it. It was when
91.
I was it was when I was out there. Yeah, we came back and I opened up a shop like probably like 6 months later.
So, but that I want to hear more about that first trip to New York, right? So
Yeah.
you showed up in New York, and like you just
We
like,
went to the new music seminar
okay,
because again, he was part of the music,
yeah,
scene and industry at that point. And the new music seminar, we went to the tunnel and, Biggie was performing,
wow,
you know what I'm saying? Like the UMCs, Biggie, like I said, Leaders of the New School had just dropped. So there was yeah, like it was really intense, like seeing that kind of talent and just witnessing the crowd's reaction and the feeling there. I mean, it was really, again, and it wasn't so, you know, the scene then, it was more accessible. Like
yeah,
rappers, everybody was just hanging out. Everybody was just around at the same time. So that part to me was really cool too. There wasn't like any division between anybody really. Um, but yeah, it spoke to me. All of that really spoke to me. I was you know, I remember also too, we walked the whole city because Manhattan's like 9 miles. You could
yeah,
walk the whole city if you want. We walked the whole city one time and I was just like, man, you know, this place is incredible. Like I just never I had never imagined being in a place like that with so many different kind of people. Like I felt like I could live there. I said nobody's gonna trip on somebody like me over there.
yeah,
A lot of people look like me. I felt comfortable there. I was like, this feels cool. Like it was so different. So it was like the idea to open up this shop was kind of again this idea to bring something to Denver that maybe wasn't there yet, and also a place where we could explore what was happening. Because at that point, again, you're talking about like a renaissance period in hip hop. You're talking about like this golden era starting and this 90s hip hop period coming right at the tail of it. And it was all that and then some. I mean, everybody was into it. That was when you talk about popular youth culture too, then it was more popular then than probably even it was back when I was in school. Because back when I was in school, it was something people were doing, but it wasn't organized like a movement like it was at this next period. This
no,
next period of time, it was more organized like a movement. And it had everything. It had black power, it had Chicano power, it had, power to the people, it had, be accept who you are, accept other people are, bring your culture to
yeah,
the forefront, learn about your history. Like I didn't have the desire to do any of that before hip hop. I didn't. I just felt too removed from all of it.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was really it. And then the other pinnacle was once I opened up my shop,
What was the
I
shop
would
name?
the shop was called La Casa del Funk, FONK. And the crazy part is this: I
Yeah,
didn't even realize that when we spell funk FONK, it was more just a cool thing in my mind.
yeah,
But I didn't even realize till I was talking to Zulu Gremlin that spelling of it is the spelling of it of like the people spelling, like when it's just too funky,
yep,
like the music and the dance is when in the culture is really the funk, the FONK.
yeah,
So I was kind of tripping out when I was thinking about that. But it was also La Casa del Funk because it was sort of an amalgamation of different things. Because again, we were also a record hub because of my boyfriend. We were a record hub for DMC.
yeah,
Now DMC, back then was the DJ platform as far as for clubs. So, having a DJ DMC outlet in your city meant that you could be part of a record pool, because you could be already part of the record pool that DJs were, that where they would get this stuff mailed to them. But this was a little different because they could access it in the store.
Yeah.
So all the white label stuff, all the vinyl, like, like it was like, that was really a cool way for DJs to get their music. And also it gave us like the access to have the turntables, the all the equipment they provided for us. So that was, so we had a whole little DJ setup in the shop. And then that was the era of the underground magazines as well. Like all the DJ magazines and all the hip hop ones. You had Mix Mag, you had you had uh what was the other one? It was that little one. I don't remember, but then you had all the hip hop ones as well. You had of course you had the Source, but you had all the underground ones. You had Stress, you had Ego Trip, you had I mean there was just so many. You couldn't, and then you had all the graffiti ones.
Yeah, this was your social media.
IG
It's
Times,
like
right. So we had
IG.
the dopest rack that we made that had like all these dope publications coming out from everywhere. I remember the IG Times, it was the International Get Hip Times that was coming out in New York, and that was
Yeah.
Phase 2 and Vulcan, and they were putting this out.
Yeah.
And this was like, yo, for us to see this type of work that they were doing and be able to call them up on the phone. Because again, that's how you got it. You had to call everybody up and be like, they're like, well, tell me a little bit about your shop. Like, what do you have? And if it was cool in their eyes, they'd be like, okay, here's 12 copies or whatever. And a lot of stuff, everybody was wanting, everything was exclusive too.
Yeah.
Nobody was really trying to get rich. It was still about being cool and putting your work out. So even with like I got to meet Stash and Futura because again we were connected with them. We would order their products, their Phillies Blunt shirts, their different, all the different shirts that they were making. And they did a tour and they did a show in Denver, and they came through Denver one time and hung out with us, and we got to know them a little bit more, which was really cool back then. And there was different things happening in Denver where people would, we got to meet people. The other main thing that happened too is, well, I got to add this in too real quick. The other thing that I would go to every year besides New York by then was I started going to a trade show that was happening in San Diego called the 432F show. And that show was because the ASR, the Action Sports Retailer Show, was the really big surf and skate show that would happen every year. And that was the vehicle where, places would buy their skate and their surf and even their snowboarding stuff, right? So two guys, these two brothers, that had a shop in off of Haight Ashbury in San Francisco, and then one in San Diego. Um, the brothers, one's named Michael. I forgot the other brother's name and their last name right now, but they had a shop called Behind the Post Office. This was an eccentric little shop. Again, a little bit similar because back then too, I mean, everything, the movement encompassed a lot. Like it encompassed house, it encompassed like, so things weren't really just, it wasn't just hip hop. It was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
house was actually a part of hip hop, if even that, if you could even think like that. It was like that. And
All these subcultures got together because
that was what
everybody
it was. It
places
was
to go. Yeah.
subcultures. You're right. And so, his shop, it was like that. It had a lot of really different underground stuff happening. So their decision to start this underground trade show for the clothing brands that we were seeking for our shops, and there were shops like our shops all over the nation, was like visionary, yo.
Yeah.
So little did they know what they were creating was a hub that everybody started coming to. So everybody from New York would come to this underground trade show. Some of them would go because the ASR, because again, some of them were working, for like Doze was working for Bad Boy, the 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 surf label. He created that little dude like going like this with the little hair spiked, that was their little logo.
That's where
He
I got my
created that.
name, Devious Dose.
That's what I'm saying. So I
Original.
mean, he
Yep.
created like a lot of the first like logos and things like that people had really seen. So there were people and artists that were already parlaying with those bigger companies by then. But again, the underground stuff always remained relevant for the majority, as far as what we were into, or for the people that were like really into the culture.
Yeah.
So this 432F show, everybody would be there. Like it was kind of like it became the place to be. So San Diego became the place to be and go to during these times. So for me too, going over there, I met all types of like I met the dudes from Top to Bottom, Zodak and Severe, the
Mhm.
dudes from Tribal, Cutfather, rest in peace.
R.I.P.
I met the West Coast Rock Steady chapter as well. So
You already knew about Rocksteady at this time. Like you already kind
hmm
of knew who they were.
yeah, I had already met. Yeah, I had already met them, some members as well, already from going to New York. But yeah, I met more members as well going. I think I even probably met Legs at the ASR show. I'm sorry, at the 432F show in San Diego. I don't think I met him in New York.
That's dope.
And again, everybody had clothing lines. He
Yeah.
had True School. I wanted True School. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So me being able to order this stuff and take it back to my shop, people in my shop were like, "Yo, this stuff is crazy."
Yep.
I mean, we had the dopest stuff. And the thing about my shop too was is that you can imagine it was in downtown, but it was this area right by all the railroad tracks and the loading docks. And so it was like very, very underground,
Yeah.
right? To get there, it was right next to a tortilla factory. And then it was right across the street from an actual homeless shelter. So it was kind of dicey, obviously, over there. But um, you know, when you come into the shop and you see the merch, you'd be like, whoa. And then again, we had the turntables, and then we had another store, we had another room in the shop. And this room was it was turned into an African style hut. And it was filled with a line called Two Hype. Now, this is to me when we think about like we were doing stuff before anybody was thinking like this. These two brothers that created Two Hype, Chris Christmas and Dwayne Pride. Dwayne, rest in peace. He passed away last year, but they these guys were visionaries. They were all about the historic Black college movement.
Mm.
And so what they were doing is they were taking a lot of the historic colleges and Big Ten universities as well,
Mhm.
and they were making tracksuits with
Mm.
with the college colors and with the logos of the school.
That's fresh.
These So check it out. They were reversible. The other
Yeah.
side had all different African prints from different tribes in Africa. Yo, when
That.
I'm saying like this was crazy, and they were $100, which back then people was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you got to remember, Jordans back then were still $100.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like things didn't, the value of stuff never really changed. T-shirts were $25 back then. So I mean, to pay 100, 150 for a reversible tracksuit was like, it the thing about it for Denver, it was ahead of Denver's time. I think if it was this was maybe in New York, it would have really hit.
Took off.
It
Yeah.
didn't hit that hard in Denver. It was more like people would go back there and be like, "Yo, this is trippy." Like we sell more to out of towners, like people that would come in our shop by mistake or else find out about it from out of town and that were from New York or from other bigger cities. They would go in there and they would buy that stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people in Denver, like, and there's one or two people that I know that still have those suits. Like if you made those suits today,
Oh.
you'd sell out in a minute.
Yeah. It's a
I
wrap.
mean,
It's a wrap.
they were that fresh. So anyway, having that kind of stuff, having that energy,
So
so this
how
led
long
to
was your shop open for?
my shop. It was only open for maybe 2, 3 years because
Mm.
of this big moment that happened. And
Okay.
that was when, again, for us, I gotta mention a few cats that were really instrumental to me in my development. There was these three individuals that used to come hang out at the store regular, and they were three guys. One's name was Fiends, one's name was Voice, and one's name was Mars.
Okay.
And they were the like for me, they were each really different. Fiends was your classic Chicano b-boy.
Yeah.
He had a black sweatshirt with his name in Cooper letters and some Levi's jeans and some Pumas
Straight
on,
up.
right?
Yeah.
That was Fiends, right? And some kind of hat or whatever.
Yeah.
Just that was his regular normal look.
That's
Mars
LA
was this,
Breaker style.
straight up. And Mars was this kind of like Dickies. He was all about Dickies, Pumas, and then wearing all the different t-shirts that came out of the shop, the top
Yeah,
to bottom ones, the tribal ones, the Phillies Blunts ones, and he'd wear the big Applejack hats because everybody was wearing these Applejack hats at the time as well. They were really popular. So that was his look, and Voice kind of he had a look kind of similar to Mars, but Voice was the best graffiti artist I had ever seen in Denver. Like this guy, I mean, he was he was really living the life. Fiends was the best b-boy I had ever seen. Like just, and Mars was one of them type of Renaissance dudes. He could do it all. And he just had the charisma and the character of a b-boy 100. So these three guys and their influence on me was everything. I mean, it was like if you can imagine if I was back in high school, I would have been doing those things with these dudes. You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Like I would have been with them because they, like they started me out on my graffiti journey, right?
That's
And
what I was going to ask. What came first, you dancing or the graffiti?
yeah. No, it was graffiti. It was I started really getting the fever and just learning and studying it more. And so that's how I started. And then with breaking, to be honest, like I was, I'll be honest, like I was too into partying. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? I was too into partying. I was still hanging out with like gang members. I was still partying. It was still for me like the conscious part hadn't really fully hit. Like it hit, but it didn't really hit yet. It was oh, my eyes were starting to be open. But what hit it for me was when Jam on the Groove, before the show became Jam on the Groove, it was called Ghetto Original because that was their dance troupe name.
yeah.
They came through and they did like a soft launch of the show in Boulder, which is like 30 minutes away. So we all went to see that.
And what year
And
is this?
this was in 91.
91. Okay.
So that was honestly when that was when I had no. This was in 92. This was
Okay.
in 92. I had like that aha moment. Um, watching them up there and see I had never seen anything like this. Like they were basically obviously amazing dancers.
All the legends. All the
It was
legends
all
were.
the legends. I mean, it was, back what I who I saw was of course Legs,
Mhm.
um, Quick Step, Fable, Ken Swift, um, Zulu Gremlin, and then a guy named Odessala, a guy named Doc, um, and Honey Rock wasn't in it yet, and neither was Rockefeller. But I saw I think Z Boogie and Mr. Wiggles. Z Boogie was his wife.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Masami was in it. I think she might have been in it too. But for me, just to see these stories that they were presenting, like, and the way that they were creating stories and telling stories through these dances, I just didn't even know. I didn't even know it was possible. When you see stuff, you're like, whoa, I didn't even know you could really do that, yo.
Yep.
And it was so pure. It was so sick. And it was literally like I was sitting there and I was watching it and I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's actually what I want to do. Cause I was trying to figure my life out. I was going to art school
Mhm.
and then I was going to the shop. That was two things I was doing. And I was kind of set on being a fine artist. I was a furniture maker. I used to make all this stuff for the store. We had all these props, different things all around. I made it all. I was really into woodworking and metal crafting, and I would make furniture and stuff.
That's
So
hard.
I was gonna do that, and I actually later on ended up having a job lined up in San Diego that I didn't end up taking because I ended up just getting so into hip hop. But um, so for me, seeing that and the other thing that really hit me too is like I was starting to date this gang member drug dealer dude,
Mm.
and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like
Yeah.
what am I? What do I really want to be? Who am I? Still. And after after the show, we went to hang out with them. Actually, Fiends had a party and they all came, and we was just hanging out with them, chilling. And I ended up buying a bunch of merch and stuff for my shop. But what hit me is that same week I was in my shop and it was late one night, and I had a gun in my shop because
Yeah.
again it was in a little bit of a crazy area of town, and I'd be there till late at night by
Mhm.
myself half the time. And I had a couple of occasions where I got robbed and things have happened. So I had gotten this little 22. It was
Yeah.
a joke actually, but whatever. I
I'm
used to go
saying.
pop it off at this brickyard just trying to learn how to shoot it. But if you
Yeah.
ever shot a 22, like the kickback on them things is crazy. Like it's
Yeah.
not how you think it's gonna be. But anyway, um, I heard the door. I had one of them ghetto alarm systems where I just had a bunch of bells tied to the door.
That's
So
right.
I heard the door open. I'm like, it's late as heck. And I had forgotten to lock the door. I was doing something before I was leaving. I was like, yo. And I look, and my shop had this long, it was like a really long walkway that led you into the shop. And I looked all the way down and I seen these two really big black dudes
Yeah.
with dreads, with Zulu beads, with black medallions. And I seen this little short dude in the middle of them with some gold teeth, and he looked like a little character off one of my shirts from the shop. And he comes and sits down. He's like, "Yo, peace. My name's Zulu Gremlin.
Little
You
gremlin,
know,
I knew you were gonna
yo,
say.
yo." And he comes and he sits down with this huge binder, and he's like, "Yo, have you heard of Zulu Nation? I want to show you some of the infinity lessons." And he sits there and he's just chilling with me, taking me through some of this history, taking me through these lessons, and I'm just like, "Yo, this
Bugging
is
out.
real." Like I'm like, "This is the realest day of my life," type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So for me, after that, it was a wrap. Me and Fiends and Mars, we used to study all day with Zulu Nation, the Infinity Lessons. Me and Fiends signed up our membership cards. And, back then
still
you
have
had
a
to sign up.
membership cards.
Yeah, we still have our membership cards. It took them a year to get to us,
Yeah,
but we got them. Yeah, we had our little membership cards,
yeah,
and we were just into it. So that whole experience for me, and then that's when I started breaking because Quickstep stayed in town. He ended up starting to like one of my girlfriends at the time, this girl Juanita. So he stayed in town, and he just that's when they all created Lords of Finesse.
damn.
And so that was the birth of Denver's most, in my opinion, of that era, most prominent, b-boy crew for
Yeah.
sure, hip hop crew
And,
in general.
and how did
And
you get the name Asia One? Like, when did that?
so so this is how this that came from my boy Voice because of Dondi.
Mm,
Because Dondi Dondi used to have this little habit of doing a little Asia piece on like the caboose of the trains in the
okay.
yard. So he would do like whatever piece he'd be working on, he just like zip away at one point and do this like little Asia piece like on the very back of the train, kind
Yeah.
of at the last little part. And my boy Voice was like, you know what? You should write Asia because you're Chinese. It makes sense. And he said, and because Dondi's the best writer that has ever lived. And I was like, yo, you're right. And so that it gave me a name to write. And it just became my hip hop moniker.
You didn't
And
have a name before this?
no, I was, no,
That's your real name?
yeah, I was Nancy U.
Yeah, Nancy,
I was
you.
Nancy U. You know,
That's hard.
that's who I was.
Yeah,
So yeah, I started writing that and I started becoming that. It became a persona.
yeah.
It became a persona. I
It happened.
created a persona, and based on this. And when I decided to close my shop and move to San Diego, it was because I felt like that I was so hungry to be and do more, and I felt like I couldn't do any more here, and I also felt like I couldn't be the person I really wanted to be there. Do you
Word.
understand? Like growing up in a neighborhood, everybody sees you a certain way. You're already a certain way in people's eyes. I didn't even know, I didn't feel I could get away from some of this neighborhood stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a way out. And I'll never forget, I moved on. We had some great parties. We did a bunch of stuff. I mean, we did a bunch of breaking events. We did all kind of cool stuff. And there was a bunch of biters that started coming around and trying to open other shops, and
Yeah.
that would we had a lot of conflict with. Let me plug this computer in real quick.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
But yeah, we we really we brought a lot to that community. I mean, we really helped bring like a lot of the black and brown community together in Denver, which was really separated as well because of neighborhoods. And um that part, and being able to all kick it together like was amazing. It was something that I had never felt in Denver, but I had outgrown it. I was ready to go. And so for me, um, you know, again, this decision to move to San Diego because they had such a dope underground hip hop scene there.
Yeah.
So, we moved January 4th, 1994.
Wow.
And I moved and I got into it the minute I went there. I mean, it was like I was I was working at a homeless teen shelter, and that was kind of like my night job.
Mm.
And I did like I worked the night shift there. And in the day I worked for another organization passing out like clean needles and condoms and stuff like that. And I used to ride a skateboard, so I would just skateboard everywhere around the city because I lived like right in the middle of the city. And skating was popular then. Everybody used to
Yeah.
skateboard just to get around, so I used to skate around and do my day job, then do my night job. And we decided to start a Zulu Nation chapter out there.
Word.
So that became another thing. And then through the Zulu Nation chapter and through starting to break and see the change that was happening because of a new dance emerging, freestyling or boogieing or housing, the breaking was kind of just sidelined. It wasn't really something that people really look forward to or celebrated anymore. So that was when the concept to create the B-Boy Summit. And we literally had the summit 6 months after I moved there. The
Wow.
first summit in '94 was 6 months after I moved there. So I mean, I hit the ground there, boots running. They said, right, or whatever they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what how it was. It was there was no time wasted because it was a movement. Things were moving. Things were happening.
Would you say it's something that just came organically, or was it like you sat
Yeah,
down and you were like, "Yo, like
it
here's this
was it was
idea."
it was an inspiration because I was I was chilling again with you know I was more of a fan at that point.
Yeah.
Like I was more of a supporter because I was barely starting to break. I wasn't, good at all. I was just barely starting. It was more for me seeing the treatment, how they were treated.
Mm.
When you see people treated bad, you just want to do something. And they were treated bad. They
Yeah.
really it was kind of a joke. Like people was like, "You still doing that? You
Yeah.
guys need to get over that and move on to this." So that was that was the catalyst. And what I love is that it was really built by Zulu Nation. It was really built by San Diego's chapter, the SD Zulu ones. And
Yeah.
our chapter was made up of we had the first ever Zulu youth chapter. So
Oh,
we had like 10 to 15 members of youth,
yeah.
like that were preteens. They were like 13 to 17.
That's hard.
And that we were directly mentoring all the time, hanging out all the time with them. And so it was built like from their vision, from our vision together, from elders vision. And it was built with a very high intention. That was why it's called the B-Boy Summit,
Hmm.
like a high point, a peak, the highest point,
Yeah.
because we were trying to counteract all the things that it was currently going through. It was like sidelined, it was lowered, it was seen as unimportant. And I kept thinking, but wait, isn't this the cultural dance of hip hop?
Yeah.
How can the cultural dance of hip hop not be something important anymore?
That's real.
Like is that just interchangeable? Is the culture of hip hop just interchangeable? Any dance that comes along is just now the cultural dance of hip hop. So to me, you know, it was one of those things. And again, like you can't fight popular culture because the thing is, it was like trendy, like the trendy style, the trendy era, and then the movement into this new style of dance. That this new style of dance too. When you think about it too, when you look at freestyle dance, I appreciate it a lot more now
Yeah.
because now when I look at it and look back, I see that it's just an expression of black people to the music that was coming out then.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot more sense to do that style of dance than to try to break to
Hmm.
that style of music.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work even for me because I was when I was learning to break, like I was breaking to Black Moon, I'm breaking to like Mob Deep. And it just, and when I look at my early footage, that's why I have this really funny kind of like
Right.
style, like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
because it's not really, it's really hard to break to that. It doesn't really make sense. You could try, and there's songs you can. I mean, Gangstar,
Yep.
I would never say it's irrelevant. I know a lot of people always like, yeah, I like to break to hip hop. I get you. I mean, I never take that away. But when you actually break to break beats, it's a whole different
It
experience.
is. Yep. No, definitely. And to
Yeah.
give some perspective too for the people watching, is like at this time too with breaking specifically, like it was dying out. People, was like, oh, that's that
Yeah.
old thing. That's what kind of what kids do, or that's what we did when we were kids, and the whole rap and what people know as rap really started taking the forefront. And then
Yeah.
the image of like who the same people involved in the same culture started changing, and really so like something like the summit is really what helped keep the true essence of it alive, right? Because a lot of people's
Right.
image of what they thought hip hop was starting to change, right?
Right, because hip hop does change. Hip
Yeah.
hop, because it's a youth culture and because it's informed by society, right? It's informed by what's going on in the streets.
Yep.
It's informed by the music being made. So we always have to understand that, and that's why I can appreciate freestyle dance more now. Um, when you when you if you go and you look at footage of groups like the Soul Brothers,
Yeah.
and you see what they were doing to the music at that point in time, and same with the Mop Tops and different groups, um the other group would be that we checked out a lot was um the one with Divine Styler, Scheme Team,
Mhm.
right? When you see and that was the cool thing too, is that all these groups pretty much had like there was an MC that was putting out music that would feature these dancers. They were part of his group, you know what I mean? Like how Heavy D and the Boys
Yep.
was how like Divine Styler and Scheme Team were,
Yep.
which was how Def Jeff and the Soul Brothers were. And the music was, this is pro black music, this is revolutionary music, this is, so that era, it made sense that the dance looked different, and the everything,
Yeah.
the style changed of the clothing and what have you. So yeah, you could see that, like, wow, the b-boy b-girl image probably looked really mad dusted by then, right? It looked
Yeah.
way too stoic, like fat laces, nameplate belt buckles, Kangol. I mean, I'll say this, in the circles on the West Coast then, you had a lot of different styles. I mean, we shared circles with anybody that was dancing then, and you
Yeah.
had every different kind of style you could imagine with people dancing in the circles back then. And no, all the dancers accepted one another. It was more of like the larger movements that were part of those dancers
Mm.
were the ones that were kind of like, yo, that's whack, yo, I can't
Yeah.
believe they're
Yeah.
still doing that, or yo. I mean, I remember when, I would hear, yo, two crazy things. One was I think it was in New York, but there was a circle and Legs was standing there, and um and Guru, rest in peace, was standing there, and Jeru the Damager. And Jeru leans over to Guru and he's like, yo, why are they still doing that? That stuff is played out, right?
Yeah.
And Guru, and I'm sitting there thinking like I'm just wondering what's gonna happen, right? I
Yeah.
was always on the fringes, so I was just kind of like, yo,
Uh
what's he
oh.
do? So Guru looks at Jeru and he's like, yo, bro, you're bugging. Like, that's like, breaking is the traditional dance of hip hop. He
Yeah.
straight just, that's all he had to say. And Jay was like, "Oh, word, word." He just, it was one of those moments where it felt so good. It felt so good to know that, you know, somebody like him wasn't afraid to just check his boy standing right there, that was, one of the dopest, hottest MCs at the moment, but again was not correct in his understanding and his interpretation. Because we used to, honestly, we would show up in mass because we were like, because of the summit, I'll definitely say the summit had a lot to do with it. The movement was growing. There was
Yeah.
a lot of b-boys and b-girls, man. There
Hmm.
was a lot
Revitalized it.
all over Southern California and Northern
Yeah.
California. I mean, we were populating. That's why we went everywhere. We'd go to Chino, we go to Riverside, we go to everywhere, Pomona,
Hmm.
Claremont Mesa. We went everywhere because there was practices everywhere. So we knew who was breaking in every different local part of Southern California, all the way to Oceanside, all the way to San Diego and back. So after that, because I think it was like a Black Eyed Peas released something. They went and got, you remember when people used to put out those cassettes that were like paper, you could only play them a few times or
Oh
something. It was
yeah,
like
yeah.
a promo thing. They took all of those and they threw them all in the street, and somebody had a truck and they just drove over them up and down till it was like, and they did it right on Wilshire Boulevard, right where the El
Damn.
Rey is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I mean. Like we didn't put up with that kind of madness. It was a similar situation happened when Chain Reaction, they were making that documentary, and they had a release for their documentary, and Big Boy from Power 106 was hosting it.
What?
And the only people that really came were all the B-boys and B-girls, because we were like, yo, we always heard so much about this group Chain Reaction from
Yep.
Richie Rich and other people, that we were like, man, we got to see what these guys are about, like, and learn about their history. So we were all there. We flooded that spot. And Big Boy gets on the mic and he says, he shows some footage of them and he says, yeah, man, all you B-boys and B-girls, man, you can learn a lot from these guys, man. You need to stop spinning on your damn heads, right?
Mm.
And recognize the real. Yo, this dude, can you imagine? And we're all the people. So we get up, and of course, I think we started fighting. I don't know. It was a melee. But it was, we just were like, yo, you ain't gonna respect us, bro. We're too many. We're always more than your little group that you even intended this release for. I don't see none of your locker people here. You know what I mean? We're actually all here, and you're
And
gonna
even in the
disrespect us.
documentary, they diss breaking.
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I mean. That's, I think, when we got up and started wiling out.
Because they called
And
it like the
that,
cancer, like the cancer.
yes, the cancer. That's
Yeah,
when we got up, right? Because the first thing is the Big Boy said that, but we didn't do nothing then.
yeah,
We were just
nah,
like,
whatever.
shut up, bro. You,
Yeah,
like, you're an idiot, man. There's nobody likes you. Like, shut up,
yeah,
you know? And then it was that cancer part.
yeah.
That's when we got up. And that's when we were like, oh, heck to the no. We are not
Yeah,
sitting
they try to
here
like
through
blame
this.
breaking for killing, locking,
Yes, you're
pumping.
right. That's exactly what they said. It was the cancer
Yeah, 'cause
of.
I have like an old beat up version of it, right? And of course everything this whole section right now we're not gonna put up, but I hit up Cool Pockets, right? And like try to show him some love and bring him back in the scene because he's from 818, he's from our
Right,
hood, like
right.
try to show him that love. And I'm like, yo, I have like a version of your guys' documentary, but I want to like, I want to show you guys love and bring you guys back out and kind of all this and stuff. He just he doesn't even like respond to anything I say.
Hmm.
He hits me back up with, I'll sell you a copy of the documentary for $150. I was like, oh, that it hurt. I was like, oh man, like you have no clue, like, because his son would come to our events and always be like, oh, I'm Cool Pockets Junior, because Jekyll would bring him, and it's just like,
Right.
we show him some love and be like, oh, you know what, like it'll be cool to get your dad out and tell their story, their history, because this generation knows nothing about change.
Right, but there's a reason when people fall off the map like that, you start
Yeah,
realizing there's a real legitimate reason.
yeah, yeah. And he's
Like the
dope, he's,
community, people think that they can disrespect the community and that the community is still going to have their backs. It just doesn't work like that.
nope,
It just
not at
doesn't.
all.
That's why we have so much more power than we always realize. Like, we can pretty much stop anything if we didn't want to. We
Yeah,
can stop any of the movements that are trying especially the ones that come out and take our stuff and try to do other things with them. We have a lot of power.
yeah.
But
So real quick on
yeah.
the summit, like, so you guys threw the summit. Did you know right away it was going to be like an annual thing, or in the beginning did you have more? Did you have multiple summits per year, or was it always like
So
once?
right, I mean, I think we just did the first one, right? So we did the first one, and then the
What year was
reaction,
that?
that was in August of '94. And when we did that one, the reaction was so strong by the community. And we brought Legs out. We brought him out,
Is this when he's
and
sitting on the basketball court?
that was in '95
Okay.
because he came out again. He would always come out after that. But we brought him out mainly because again, in that period of time, you had that whole East Coast, West Coast kind of stuff starting out. And everything filters into everything. We have to understand. We think it wouldn't, but it did filter into the b-boy scene because, you know, especially you had a lot of groups. You had groups, not a lot. Well, you had groups like Air Force that were really promoting a West Coast identity and story of breaking.
Yeah.
And even to the point when it would be like, yo, we're not B-boys and B-girls, we're breakers.
Yeah.
You know, they're the
Very
only
true.
B-boys and B-girls are if you're down with the East Coast. And if you're down with the East Coast, you're a sellout because you're over here on the West.
In the West, yeah.
And that really created a lot of division, that ideology. And that was actually, they would promote that at their events, the
And then
radio.
the same thing too, like on the East Coast, it was like, oh, you're a West Coast b boy, nah, you suck. Like you don't
No,
break it.
no, no. That's where, that's honestly where I will break I will break that down, yo.
Yeah,
I
break.
will break that down. There's we always thought that the East Coast didn't like us. Like we always kind of thought that, and it was never like that. Really, it was never really like that. It was just, and I realized that when I start going to New York. But the East Coast always stands up for hip hop
Yeah,
and break in and everything else. So if you're gonna go over there, they're gonna challenge you. It's just what they do.
yeah,
I would go over, I would get challenged all the time there because that's just how they do. But if you go there respectfully and you represent correctly, like, they give you love. They'll give you, I mean, they'll give you respect. I don't know about love. They'll give you respect. But it wasn't how we thought, like, oh, they all hate us. It wasn't like that at all. It's a really one of those misunderstandings based on no connection, right?
yeah.
No way to interconnect at that
That's
point,
ego.
other than you went there, they went here.
Yeah,
And so I really feel that. And so it was hard, especially as somebody that would be able to go to New York and come back now and then, to like sit through some of these things, like some of the radiotrons when this was being promoted by them on the mic. Like, yo,
people
you
used to
know,
wild out on the mic at the event.
yo,
People don't
yo, it was
realize.
really crazy. Like, and the thing about it too is they would be upstairs in this room on the mic. They wouldn't be on the floor like how
No,
people
no.
do now. People used to be in like a whole different room hosting stuff or
Yeah.
talking on the mic. It
Like
was
the
so
DJ
weird.
booth, they would be like in the
Yeah,
DJ
in the
booth.
DJ booth, and you'd be like, "Yo, come down here because you ain't gonna talk that right." Because they would really, basically what it was to create a lot of division. I think maybe what they were trying to do is create like cultural pride
Yeah,
for the West Coast, but it didn't do that. It created like it created a lot of division, and not only that, but it created a lot of violence. And so the problem is that a lot of these young people, these young kids, especially the Latino kids that were getting into breaking,
yep,
were really getting into it to try to, so they didn't have to be in the gangs
yeah,
as an alternative. But when they saw all this foolery, you know what I'm saying, like within breaking, it then this kind of gang concept just kind of came as well into breaking. And I think that to me too, like, misinformation sows the seeds of discontentment. It just it just, unfortunately, that was happening. And so there was a lot of negativity then in those eras, in that time. It was a lot of negativity. At the same time, the dance continued, people still danced. People, you had amazing people coming out of the West Coast that were dancing, and the dance was starting to look different, which is great, because when you look at like a lot of that early footage from like breaking and entering and stuff like that, and you look at breaking and you just want to turn it off, right? I can't even watch that. It is so hard to watch. Every time, everybody looks super dope when they're like popping and they're doing that super super animated style, but then once they hit the floor, you're like, dang it, man, what is happening?
yeah, dude.
And you see that wrong style took hold. And the wrong style is so hard to do too. It's painful. That's when I'm like, I don't even know how y'all were learning it like that. Like, that is painful to try to do it that way.
Yeah,
But you see this next generation and wave when form and technique really took root. Like the dance really evolved, and that's really because, again, because the summit, because of Radiotron, because of these events. The West Coast started really basically becoming a stronghold in b-boy b-girl breaking culture. And again, it's one of those things we talk about it now, like, yeah, those identity terms, like b-boy b-girl breaker, right, break dancer, whatever. People weren't really using the breakdance term. They were saying break in or breaker. But those were more identities based on like what you viewed yourself as, based on like what you were into. If you were really into hip hop, especially hip hop from an East Coast, in term like cultural understanding of the history of the movement, of the revolution, of Zulu Nation, of MCing and DJing. Like you were more into the B-boy B-girl image of breaking and identity, because it was an identity. It was kind of an understanding. If you were not, you were more of a breaker.
Mhm.
And if you had more of a West Coast affinity and allegiance, you were more of a breaker. So those terms really were political to us at that point. You know what I mean? They meant something more than what a lot of people realize. The cool thing about it now is that now all of those three terms are embraced, and in a way that I really appreciate, because breaker or breaking and breaker has become a term that is non-gender. And now, we live in a time when gender is such a big part of the conversation, that we've been ahead of the game. Quickstep said that. I started cracking up. He's like, man, we already had the term before anybody even got with that whole gender politics, right? We was
Yeah.
just breakers. Breakers just a non-gender term for people to break, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, but the West Coast had a really strong footing then, and really in those formative years of West Coast breaking history became, when I think when we look back now, and especially in the future, when we look back and we're going to look at the trajectory of hip hop on the West Coast, we're going to realize that, before there was hip hop here, there was the funk, dance movement.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, you know, after that, when hip hop really, hit everywhere, those dances kind of became within that. But but breaking in terms of the dance and the style of it, the real renaissance period of it here will be that 90s period, that late 80s 90s period. It won't be looked at in that those 80s period, because you can
Yeah.
look at it and be like, ooh, yeah, it's like, well,
Yeah. There's
yeah,
still
you had some people doing it, but it wasn't all that,
yeah. And
so
then
I think that's what we're going to be really, what's going to be important historically to understand. And you can understand it, you can see it, you can see the influence as well. You can see the influence of of Bay Area um, house dance style as well,
yeah.
coming into breaking through groups like Style Elements, Housing Authority,
Mhm.
and taking root as well, into like the way a lot of people would break.
Yeah.
And now, you know, you got a lot of different influences, but you can see some of those definitely took root in the West Coast.
Yeah.
And that history as far as the West Coast, um you know really like our our time period in terms of how we influence hip hop and breaking especially, it will be part of that, just like Cypress Hill will be part of it,
Yep.
right? Just like certain groups are going to always be part of it. Mellow Man Ace,
Yeah.
different groups, you know what I mean? The Far Side, Freestyle Fellowship, you have the contributors where you can really be like, yo, these groups, these events, these things really created to it was Soul Brothers, all of that helped create, you know a more of a West Coast identity of hip hop during those times.
And for the summit, like your guys is like the way the summit was held and like the things that you did at the summit, was it, I know you guys have panel discussions. Did you guys have battles right away even at the first one? Like organized like what we know today as battling, right? Like were you guys doing that in the first summit?
There was just battles. You could just see battles happening.
Yeah, there wasn't like judges and all that stuff.
No, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. The first summit, there wasn't. It wasn't like that. Like Legs came to speak, and he came to dance with
Yeah,
us.
it was like some raw, it was really
Yeah,
raw
it was just straight
underground
out
stuff.
raw. So there
Yeah.
was like a little panel, and then there was just the jam,
Yeah.
and so there was that, and then there was the next one in '95, and again that one was a lot bigger because we timed it at the same time they were doing the ASR and the 432F show.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why we had Lee and all those people access to all them because they were already coming for this stuff.
That's
You
fair.
know, that's why we had all of those. That's why we had all those people involved.
Yeah.
So that really, again,
To me, that
you know,
'95 summit is like one of the
yeah,
most
that one was really,
historic
really
events in hip hop.
amazing, man. It was
Yeah.
from the panel to the battles and stuff. We started having 95, 96, 97, 98. I think 99 was the first year that we had 99 we had the two verses, two exhibitional.
Mm.
You know, that was more of an exhibitional thing. And then after that, that then in 2000 we started actually having a two
Okay.
on two. That was kind of our regular thing to have a two on two. And then things would change. Some years it would be different things, but 99 was the first year we had the exhibitional one. And then other than that, it was just a
Jamming on.
jam.
Yeah.
Like things just set off. People came to, they came to battle other crews. They came to battle somebody they had heard of. They came to battle, that's what people did. They came to battle people that they knew would be there.
Yeah, no, and that's very important. I feel like
Yeah.
for a lot of the newer generation to see how it developed, right? Like something I always say is even like today, like say even my generation and after, we are. It's hard to say that you are like a true popper or b boy because it was a certain lifestyle that you had to live, or b girl that you had to live, and you guys were really not training to win contests, right? It was just a lifestyle that you're living, and it was a part of something that you did, and you guys would have to go through so much to get to a place to actually do your craft and show people what you have and stuff. And with now, the objective I feel for a lot of dancers is a lot different, so we are like in sense like we are we are paying homage to what once was. Like we're like I can't say anyone, especially after my generation, traveled by bus 15 hours to go to some spot and not even know if there's gonna be anyone there, but just because they know they're gonna play some fresh music, it's a dope DJ, it's a dope vibe, right? And that's what really shaped what we know. And but yeah,
Yeah.
like also when would you say you started realizing that more than just b boys and b girls were coming to the summit? Like what year would you say that you really started seeing that, like poppers and
That
lockers?
was honestly in 95. And I think they might have even been there in 94, but I
Yeah,
could be wrong. I just might have forgotten. But in 95, um, Richie Rich, Loose Caboose, Greg Campbell Locke Jr., um, I'm not sure if Hugo, I don't, there might be been a few other people. Um, you know, they, they would come, they would come. And, because again, like the music, the music that was being played, funk music, you can do all those styles too, right?
yeah.
And that was what was being played a lot. I think a lot of the music, there was we always had like the most amazing DJs, so we didn't really,
DJs had
it
to bring
wasn't it
records.
wasn't like how you think about it now, like formulated.
Yeah, because DJs had to bring records at this time, so it's not
Yeah,
like
like
a DJ
DJs
could have
brought
ten
sets, and
thousand
they
songs.
brought sets to try to, blow people's wigs back.
Yeah,
So, that was how it worked. And so the circle would always have different styles of people in it, because again, you got to remember too, like freestyle dancers would still show up. They didn't want to get down.
yeah.
They'd be there, you know what I mean? They try to get down too. I mean, people would show up. But what I loved and what I remember really fondly is that Richie Rich, Greg Campbell Locke Jr., rest in peace, Loose Caboose, these dudes wanted to show us the dance. They
Yeah.
were actively about teaching the dance to pass it on.
Hmm.
I think that they probably realized that, wow, this movement is growing. Our movement isn't growing. So and maybe they just loved dance, so they would come. So we started actively learning from those people.
Yeah.
Those are the three people that were teaching a lot of people on the West Coast how to
Wow.
lock.
And you seen
You
them at
know,
every b boy jam.
yes, man. And people were learning from them. So and we all started doing shows together and doing stuff. Like we'd always be performing with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So um it was a really cool time period. It was we all fell in love with locking. Locking was to us like the most dopest dance to come out of LA. It was
Yeah.
to us, we were like, yo, this is. And the thing about locking too is that, especially like once I met Shabadoo, I was like, man, this dance
Rest in
is
peace.
so it's so cultural. Like it's like when you see people from that era doing it, it's a way of speaking. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, what's up? Like everything in it is like a
Tribal, like,
caricature of like how that they would be interacting with one another. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So I think that that dance to us, and to be honest, it was such a polyrhythmic dance,
Hmm.
because with breaking, you only got the lower half of your body, and the upper half is only doing so much.
Hmm.
Them, you got a lot happening with your midsection, with your lower half, and your upper half.
Eyes.
you know Same with popping, but locking they're on like that faster beat, and it's a hard dance. I
That's
thought it
that
was
James
extremely
Brown funk right there.
I thought it was extremely, like, you got to, like, that kind of dance. You have to come out of your head, because if you think too much, you're not gonna be able to do it. Like, there's something about that dance that you truly have to just unlock in your soul. And I think that's the beauty of that dance, and what Don Campbell, rest in peace, created. That you can spend as many hours as you want, you can do whatever, but if you can't be unafraid,
Hmm.
like they were black people unafraid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were like, yo, we're unafraid.
The pop
We're
jerky.
communicating. And it takes that. All the dances take that. All of these dances take that. All of the street dances take that. That's, to me, the difference of like ballet and jazz and all of that to our dances, is because all of those dances rely on technical ability and the ability to overcome the human freestyle,
Yeah.
to be like almost like a robot.
Yeah.
Where street dance is the exact opposite. You can work and work as hard as you can on the technique, but if you can't be unafraid to unlock that humanity part of you, to be able to be naked in front of somebody and vulnerable in your dance, you're never going to be able to do the dance right.
Yeah, and that's what people really, I think, get lost with what originality is, and I feel like that's truly what originality is, or what it represents in our culture and our dance styles. It's like being originally you, like being
Right.
able to really let go of that ego and show who you truly are, instead of having this facade and just you being like, oh, I learned these techniques and I'm gonna do it like someone else did it. Oh, he's a little
Right.
little
Hey,
baby.
baby.
She broke in. She
That,
broke in the room.
Hi, baby.
hello. He's right
Hi,
there learning,
beautiful.
learning.
Yeah,
Let's go. Go ahead, kid.
for me, and you guys, Devious, like I've always gave B-Boy Summit the credit for this phenomenon that we have now with the popping competitions.
Yeah.
Because for me, the very first popping competition that I saw was B-Boy Summit in Pasadena.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and Sweepy, Waleed,
Ooh.
and Politics were in the final, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Skeet and the Boogaloos were judging.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like that was the very first like put together popping contest that
Yeah.
I've ever seen. So
You
like
know, that's a
that
that's a cool
created,
thing.
yeah, that created what we have now as far as the popping competitions.
Word.
And you've been
No,
Yeah,
I mean people, they when they don't get that, what they might not understand is that being rooted in the West Coast, you can't, like I said when we were talking before, who would show up, right?
yeah,
You cater to who shows up to your function. That's just how it works, right? So even though maybe you have a whole idea different, like Cross, when he created freestyle session, I think he initially envisioned it to be something different than it became,
yeah.
but he ended up catering to the people who came to his event.
yeah,
But it's not what he intentionally envisioned it to be. It's not a freestyle session, right?
yeah,
Because it was created more like for freestyle dancers and people to do anything, and because again, he was reacting against the political way that these dances were being presented. Like, a lot of people didn't, had a problem with that. Like, well, especially people that learned in like the rave scene days,
Mm-hmm.
where they were wearing like just socks and the big baggy pants. Because honestly, like breaking was flourishing during that time period. So you had all these raves happening, and some of them were hip hop raves, house raves, techno raves, but kids would be breaking in there. That's what they were
Yeah.
doing.
We
You
will be
know,
popping in this and
they
the
be
raves too.
popping. So it's like at the end of the day, you cater to your constituents. And I think with the summit, what was realized is, look, this is a West Coast institution. Like that's why we always make sure that we pay tribute and have space for that, because that's truly like our backyard. So and I think that, again, why? Because those are the people that would show up at the summit.
Mm-hmm.
you know because again, we weren't playing, like, people were probably like, when you try to think about it today, like, yeah, but I can't picture those people dancing to like what the DJs play. Nah, man, we are the DJs that we had spinning played music for the people to
Mm-hmm.
dance to. So music for the people to dance to doesn't sound like how it sounds at competitions now.
No, definitely. And something else I feel like that, and for me, from my perspective, right, being a kid who grew up in all these events, like what people don't realize as well is that you're, you didn't just have a plethora of music at home. Like you had to have records. You really had to
Yeah.
have records. And when you went to these places, even though now people, might be burnt out from a song, like you were just to listen to, like, to go be able to dance to a live DJ, whatever they played, there was a different sense of appreciation because you just, like, they would remind you of a track, or they would play a track that you haven't heard in a long time, or that your father or grandfather used to play, and it
Yeah.
would, no matter what style you did, it wasn't like, oh, where now it's like categories, right? It's like, oh, this isn't a popping song, like, oh,
Right.
this isn't a break song, like before it was just like you were a dancer, and like places like the
Right.
Summit, the DJs were fresh, so what they were
Yeah.
playing, like, was, it was just, you were, that it would take over your spirit, and you just
Right.
excited, and you
And you
just,
did whatever dance you did, and
yeah,
you held your breath if you were afraid, but you jumped out there and did it. And I think that that's why you see, like, one dude that you always see at Summit is Popcorn Chicken. That's
Yeah.
Brandon. He was,
yeah,
he was always there doing his dance, doing what he does. Same with Alfie, he'd always be there. Brother always be
I lost
there.
a brother.
These are just people that would come dance because swoop, because that's what they did. That's what they like to do.
That's real. That's real.
So, yeah, I mean, all of that, to be honest, what I noticed, especially a couple years, is what I love more is, the funk and soul dances of locking and popping, really. And these dances were a lot freer, in a sense, where they were social,
Yeah.
where people would come socialize together and do these dances, whereas breaking became something that after a while became, I'm just gonna come and just try to battle somebody else,
Hmm.
and or I'm gonna go compete. And I think the social element, we lost that along there because of the over competitions, the
Yeah.
over the influence of that competitive mentality took over just the ability to want to just do the dance. So we naturally gravitated more to what y'all were doing and tried to create a more of a platform and a space for that to well, and put more effort and energy into that, because we really saw that it was naturally happening in a way that was exciting, so, um, and it gave us something else where we were like, man, I remember, I'll never forget, there was one year that we actually had, the funk styles portion of the event in the way bigger room.
Hmm.
It was when we did it at, on Santa Monica, up there in West Hollywood at,
I remember that.
you know what I'm saying? It was
Yeah.
a red brick building. So there
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
two. One is that club, and we had, in the club part, we had the Summit. It's a smaller club. I forgot what it's called right now. But in the bigger red brick building that was way doper, that's when y'all just all, like, that was pop. When you went in there, it was just jam packed of just, that was that year. I think Sugar Pop ended up
Yeah.
snuffing Todd, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little damper to that. But at the same time, Todd handled it well, and
Yeah.
he honestly was really cool about that. But yeah, that's what I mean. That, like, I remember when I went into the breaking side, people just sitting around with their elbow pads
Yeah, chill.
waiting for something, like waiting, you know what I mean? Like things had just changed. It was people just didn't even know when to break anymore. Like they're like waiting, like, yo, I don't know if I should break now or wait till like the heavy hitters get here or da 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 da. So I think that, you know, that all became, that's been a decline period in our scene.
Yeah.
And I will say that that's been a bit of a sadness for people like myself that honestly, like, you know, we all come off differently, right? As far as when we feel like, yo, I can go off right now. Like there's different feelings and vibes we need. And it sucks to that things are really just framed in this competitive way now that you have to figure out and make time to have something other than the competition. And that, you know, we have to, you know, sort of wait and plan and sit and figure it out just to know that we're going to go up in there and dance.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Before this pandemic started happening or whatever, and I want to say like 2 3 years back, it's been happening to us too because a lot of the poppers or freestyle dancers, whatever you want to call them, will come right
Yeah.
as soon as they lose or they don't make it past the prelim, they go back home.
I go back home.
And in the final battle, you like the room is pretty much empty.
Empty.
You know what I mean? And it's
it's a
starting.
lack of it's a lack of social like integrity anymore.
Yeah.
You like there's no
Yeah,
more socializing in a sense that that's a real egotistic way to handle life.
yeah,
Like
Big time.
that
exactly.
doesn't even, you know, because but that comes from privilege, right?
Yeah.
Because we're so privileged to have all this stuff
Yeah,
instead of, you know, like when you know there's only like 2 3 events a year, you're gonna milk that for all it's worth. You're gonna
exactly.
show up when it opens, you're gonna stay till it ends, you're gonna build with folks, you're gonna try to meet some people, you're gonna try to show up, you're gonna try to battle, you're sure gonna try to fit in all the stuff that you want to do in that time frame.
Something I always
Yeah,
remind people of is, and tell them about is like there used to be lines to get into jams. Do you remember those?
Long lines,
Long lines.
long lines that took
Like
forever because they had to frisk everybody,
yes.
and everybody had to take everything out their pockets, and it just took forever because it was like one dude doing that. And
And you had
I
to
know,
show up early if you wanted to get in and cipher a good amount of
right,
time. And people were fighting for that right. People
right.
were like trying to cut in line so they could. And you
Oh
would.
yeah,
I remember seeing people as soon as they walked in the jams just start top rocking or
yeah,
just start popping just to like, because they were just so anxious. And now it's like you go into a cipher or you're at a jam and you'll ask someone like, "Yo, why ain't you getting down?" or whatever. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna wait for the contest," or like, "I don't want, I
right,
don't want to get tired." You're
right.
like, like
Tired.
yeah, like
That's
damn.
a no, man. These dude
why'd you come?
the cats that we're gonna remember forever are the kind of cats that wore that dance floor out.
Yep.
Yeah,
They just went and danced their heart out, boy, and it was like, you know, because again, they're just feeling it. That's why people like Ivan will always be so memorable because he's the type of dude that he just loves to dance.
They're like
That
Frosty Freeze,
that guy will dance. Same with Frosty. They just love to dance. They like to dance. They like to socialize. To them, they're in their element, you know. And I think that, you know, we can learn a lot from that. And maybe what we're learning from this pandemic is we're going to appreciate what we have when we have it more.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
maybe we'll try to have less. So what the things that we have less of will be more impactful.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
maybe there's things like that to consider as well. You know, maybe things are oversaturated.
yeah.
Maybe we're, you know, we're going too hard rather than saying like let's try to be co-supportive and do less but support one another more so everything can be successful, you know,
No,
and
that's,
mhm,
that's very true. And
we
I feel
can
like coming
we can
from
feel
you,
like it matters, like your success matters, my success matters, this person's success. And that there's going to take, you know, maybe that'll get us there. I mean, you know, we're the probably going to be the last state that's going to be allowed to do anything.
yeah.
You know, that's the way it's looking.
Hmm.
And that's definitely, that hits everybody hard. I mean, I'll be honest, you know, I met with Grand Park a couple weeks ago, and you know, they're the most awesome people, but you know, at the end of the day it's like, well, you know, be prepared to be virtual. And I was like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I honestly don't know because uh, if I do something, if we do something, it's going to be a lot different than what we tried to do last year. Because when you know, you try to anticipate what people will watch,
hmm
and you're really realizing, like, man, people are not watching what you anticipate them to watch.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was a fool thinking somebody's going to sit there for 8 hours when I'm like, I'm going to give people the best I can give them because I love to work so hard. And man, I'm going to just make the best I can make. And then when people don't watch it, you just, it just, it's exhausting,
No,
you
and
know?
and I I get a lot of advice from my elders, right? And they always tell me to relax a little, but I take those things so personal. Like me, Rock Swift,
I
like
know you
'cause we're
do.
hip hop
You
babies, you
guys
know, and
do.
like all you hear all day is people complaining about the essence, like, oh man, this should be like what it should be and what it shouldn't be, and then someone like Asia and the B Boy Summit does what they do, and no one's watching.
Right.
It's like I'm like, where are all these? I see more posts about what we should do than people watching this, and
It's
this is
weird.
like our history.
You know, and the thing is too that I always crack up is like people are like, "Yo, you should start doing the summit again." I get a lot of people saying that, and I'm always
Wow.
like, I don't really say much. Because I've again, what do? I cater to the people that come.
Mhm.
That's all I do. I honestly like, the way it's built now is like we've gone back to that methodology of just, making it the dopest jam we can make it and not, and really because the thing is, at the end of the day, you want it to be like what you would like if you showed up, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I like to do is I like to make people feel comfortable enough to hopefully take that safety off again and just do what they do so we can get back to doing what we do. And if that's, because you just want to get down as hard as you can, if it's that you want to battle the next person, cool. But we're not going to make, it's just the competition part to me. If we're going to do that at all, that almost has to be like its own day because
Hmm.
it's like you can't expect a jam and the competition to be able to always live together because the competition just takes too dang long.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to show up for this, show up for this, but this other day is going to be here and we're all going to be here this other day and we're really going to be enjoying this other day, and the kids are going to be there the other day, and we're going to be barbecuing, whatever, we're going to be painting, we're going to be socializing and bugging out because we still want to do that and we still want to have a space for that. So that's at the end of the day, the summit's always going to be that.
Hmm.
As far as the competitive angle, I mean, it doesn't, that angle is already handled by everybody else, so I don't really worry about that part. I'll be like, yo, I just want to keep doing things so people can feel the essence and keep always like, to me the music's paramount. So if I make sure that I have the dopest DJs, and
Hmm.
I'm always like, yo, which DJ I want to feature this DJ because I know they're gonna just the what they're gonna play is gonna make people want to move, or
Yeah.
people can be like, yo, what is that track, or what is this again? And that's to me like, if I can go somewhere and experience that, I'll be happy.
And
So
that's what I think a lot of people don't realize too as an event organizer. When you truly love this, when we throw our events, like it's dope, but it also sucks for us because it's like we're doing what we would love to be a part of.
mm-hmm,
That's what they miss, and like we're there, and like sometimes we don't get to enjoy it because we're so busy trying to make sure everything goes right. And I think
mm-hmm,
that's what a lot of people need to appreciate and really see. You know, it's like they're not like events like B Boy Summit or even like our own, like we're not throwing these events for ourselves. Like even though like yeah, we do gain something out of it, whatever it might be,
mm-hmm.
but we're truly doing this because it's something that we know that there's gonna be someone out there like us that is gonna be exposed to it and is gonna change their life, right? And
I agree, but I will say this.
mm,
I changed my mentality about that because I got tired of not enjoying my own event.
yeah,
I actually wanted to start enjoying it. So I changed, and my friends helped me see that because I used to get anxiety, at the thought of how it was all going to be. I mean, you got to understand, I've been arrested. I've had things happen to me, like bad things.
yeah,
I've been chased, I've been apprehended, I've been, so it's like I have like some trauma, residual trauma sometimes that comes up when I think about this. But my friends were able to help me, and I finally was like, because just like you guys know, preparing for something, and especially like that weekend,
mhm,
it becomes like what's involved. So I used to be like, man, I can't wait to get this over with, and my friends would be like, it was so opposite for them because they'd be like, man, I love every moment of this. This is like this is so exciting. This is like, even doing this work is so exciting. And they helped me really change my frame of it. And so now I look forward to it. And now while I'm doing it, I really enjoy it. I
That's
really, really do enjoy it. And I actually make it so I can enjoy it. And, this is the first times, even like recently, where I dance at it and I'm just enjoying it, because I'm like, man, if I'm going to put all this work into it, I'm going to enjoy it too.
yeah,
Because really, I'm part of this community. We're all part, and I don't want to, I noticed I don't have a lot of memories of some of the summits,
yeah,
because I was like not there.
yeah,
Like, y'all were there, I wasn't there. I'm over at the door trying to make the cops not show up. I'm over here trying to make, the fire marshal dude go away. I'm over here, like, so those days are gone, thankfully. And now I'm like, man, I'm in a different position now. I'm in a different place where I can, you know, especially those years, I'll be honest, like those were a lot of my pinnacle years in dance that I didn't get to show off my dance. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Why do you think I went to freestyle session? I wasn't that crazy about freestyle session. I wanted to get off. I wanted to
yeah.
show up and show out. So I showed up to show out. You know what I'm saying?
No,
And if
it's
it wasn't dope, I tried to make it dope, because I'm like, I'm not gonna be up in here and something not dope. I don't have time for this. I
yeah,
want to, I want to turn this up. So, that kind of mentality really helped me, like I said, bring that energy to other people's events, so that, I'm like, man, I don't care if this feels kind of whack. We're gonna make this dope,
yeah,
because people are here. We don't want people thinking like they're not coming over to the West Coast no more because our events are whack, or because of this,
mhm,
that, and the third. We gotta do more for our people. Even if I don't, see eye to eye, it doesn't even matter, man. I just honestly, like, if these events start failing, people aren't going to go to events anymore. And then what's going to happen to dances? You know what I mean?
we
If you
appreciate
don't,
that. I know, speaking
yeah,
from us, like when Asia, someone of your caliber walks in, it's like royalty walking in, and it makes you
like,
feel
let's
like,
get busy. Let's have,
yeah,
let's do what we're here to do, man. Like,
it's real.
because that's why we're here. Let's take off the facade. Let's take off the mask of life. Let's be able to be real here, because we have to keep that facade in life so much, man. Like, our events are like, it's like being able to go home. It's like this feeling of acceptance. You should feel accepted when you walk in the door. You should feel like, man, you should be able to encourage the next person. You should be able to still step to somebody and feel like that's all right, that you're not disrespecting. Like, that's all part of our backyard.
Yeah,
So we should feel fine doing all of that. You know what I mean? And even if people go to the event that you don't like, oh well, you know what I mean? That's part of it. They got to be there too. We all got to be accepted in this. That's what hip hop is for. It creates a acceptance in a way, and a vehicle for us. So we always got to keep working against the oppressive nature of like colonialized mentality that sometimes comes into our framework of our events.
yeah,
And I really think it does come into the framework of these competitive events a lot. We got to break that up a lot. We have to mess that up a lot. And this is the same kind of conversations we're having with the USA breaking committee. Like, yo, you don't have to build this with that that Eurocentric mind state in place.
mhm,
Really, it doesn't have to be built like that. So we have to remind ourselves of that. Even this idea of one winner, you know what I mean? We have to be able to look at that sometimes and be like, what does that really do to people's psyche at the end of the day? You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like, it's good to analyze it now and then. It is. And say, maybe there's another kind of way we can host things, or compete in another style of fashion.
mhm,
Because at the end of the day, the same people usually win, based on the Eurocentric model of how this is created, of competition, period. So we need to look at that sometimes in hip hop and say, was hip hop meant for us to compete through and with?
yeah,
and and address that and find. And again, a lot of it is doing what we don't want to do, because a lot of times people don't want to go outside their comfort zone and be like, man, but I really do just want to show up and get down and leave. I do really do just want to. Well, we got to work on that, because that's not community.
mhm,
That's not real community. We have to work to be a real community. Real community takes work. It takes you getting off your butt, not being satisfied to watch this at home, and show up and feel stuff again, and talk to people again, and bug out again, and teach the kids again. I mean, it's all kind of part of it. And that's what made those early events so real and rich, because people, we wanted to do that. We didn't have anywhere to do it. We didn't have any outlet for it. So when we created that outlet, it was natural that, we worked hard to show up and get the most out of that we can. So nowadays we still need to come out of our comfort zone and do that, I
Yeah,
think.
I completely agree, and even us as an organization, we're learning. We definitely wouldn't exist without people like you guys, or especially like the summit, being around and us being inspired by that and trying to, do our version of it and our like, because our whole thing was, there was nothing in the valley, so we really
Right.
wanted to, bring that what we would go to out here, right? Because there's, as you know, in these areas, it's very hard for kids to travel, right? And their parents are
Yeah.
working and all that type of stuff. But me and Kid, we really like to not just have poppers on because we, the message does kind of, it's different through with different people, and with someone like you who's a hip hop legend and a true practitioner of this culture. We need the poppers to hear. We need everyone to hear this, right? But
Mm.
especially the scene that we're leaders in, because it does get lost, right? It does become popping is taking the page from breaking in the sense of it's about competitions. It's about who's winning everything, and whoever's winning is whose voice is going to be heard, right? And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily productive on
Oh,
how.
check it. This is what trips me out about popping.
Mhm.
This is what trips me out about popping. Okay, I think that, you know we could get too egocentric in these dances,
Mhm.
right? We really can. These dances serve a place, like in an outlet for us, right? It serves a lot. But when we get too egocentric about it, um, you know what I mean? Like, you ain't popping through life, right? You still got to be a dad. You're popping at your event. Just like we're not breaking 24/7. We we got jobs. We have other interactions with family members. We got other things we're working on. You know, so these things that we do are ways we could show out and show up and get our little ego off. But that's where that stops. And I think that um, you know, I think that with popping, it can kind of create, like, I don't know, people can take that ego and run with it a little bit too much, in the sense that yo man, this is still just a dance. At the end of the day, like, if you look at like all these old school heads out, because the popping, the other thing too is you can pop for a lot longer than you can break.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
Yeah.
when you look at these OGs, and you look at when they get together to pop, it's a social expression and time for them,
yeah,
right? Because they
Yeah.
seriously do got to work these 9 to 5s. They seriously do got to deal with, like, all types of oppression and stuff every day. And these dances are a way they go into their world and really express. And I think that these new generation poppers may deal with some of the same stuff, but at the end of the day, like, their lives are revolved around popping.
hmm
When really, like, is that, like, is popping like a full-time 24/7 thing? Is pop, because I know breaking isn't a full-time 24/7 thing. It's never been able to be a full-time 24/7 thing. I mean, we live in a hip hop, like, community where we that's where our friend groups are a lot of times. That's where, we plan the events together, we go visit each other at, and we go teach the stuff and whatever. But we're still members of a community outside of hip hop. And I think that, I don't think any of these things were meant to do 24/7. And I think it should make it so that when you do get to do it, that you do it in the proper spirit, right? That's It's in a community spirit. It's in a sense, like, you don't look at these OGs trying to go up and win these battles when honestly they could wipe any of these new jacks out.
yeah, yeah,
I don't care. I've watched all of these new people. None of them are gonna win over these OGs. These
yeah,
OGs are just too. I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean that in the sense, and that's not the same with breaking. Breaking is a little different, but
yeah,
I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that there got to be a humility in a sense to, like, that you're doing your dance in the time and place, and understanding, like, it's one facet of you as a person. And
yeah,
please develop your other facets, because the community needs those other facets. Because if you just holding on to your popping, and it is like like you're not benefiting the world somehow by what you're contributing. We still got to find ways to, do something outside of the realm of our dance. For me, I'll give you an example. And I'm not saying everybody got to be like me at all,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that I contribute myself to movements, to groups of thinkers,
Hmm.
of doers, of helpers, right? I
Yeah.
try to be of service. And so it's not just about me and my dance all the time. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't even know I dance, which is weird. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
I
that's
dance
very
for me.
important.
I love to break. I'll always be breaking, but it's my freedom. So
Yeah.
my freedom, I'm always going to get my freedom. But as far as it
Hold
has to
on.
be me front and center breaking in terms of
Give
that,
me a second.
I just feel that, how do we stimulate, and that's a great, just maybe even discussion, how do we stimulate like the understanding of who we are outside of these dances so that we can promote more of our humanity and less of our egotistic element of just the dance.
Yeah, and I think to touch on what you're saying, and the question you asked, right, like how many people are actually living off of it, I feel like very few, right? It's very few that get that opportunity, and that does get lost a lot. And something that I always do that I guess trips people out when they come learn from me is like, especially younger people, is I tell them all the time, don't give up everything you got going on to become the best popper, right? And I always use my experience as an example of like me growing up having so much love because my dad did it, and I have uncles and just so many people that I consider family who did it, and I seen so much heartache and how much their life, how hard it became when they did just focus on trying to be a popper, right? Even use
Mm,
Franek as a perfect example, right?
right,
And what ended up happening with him. Um,
right.
so I've had these real life examples that have given me perspective, and I understand that people didn't have that. Not everyone has that, so it's allowed me and like Rock Swift to always understand that um, you want to have different things going on in your life, because if the dance is what is your outlet, and then that now becomes your source of stress, life tends to become very very difficult, right? Because now the thing that you used to go to release everything that you're going through is now the reason why you're stressed and the reason why you're feeling a certain way, and
Right.
so
Good
I
point.
think a way that us leaders in the community, or us elders now, especially let's say us who are still in that in between of battling and teaching and becoming an elder, we need to say that a lot more to the youth, right? Because a
I
lot
think
of
so
times
too.
there's this facade, and people want, obviously when they're trying to make a living off of it, they want more people to come to their classes, and they don't want to say something that might take away a couple of students. But I think we gotta agree as a community and as like leaders in the community to preach this and to let
Mhm.
kids know that it's okay to have a 9 to 5. Like I remember when I was coming up, it used to be whack. Like it used to be like
Right.
if you had
Right.
a real job, like, oh yeah, you didn't make it. You're not one of the good ones. You're not one of the best ones and stuff. And that's something my pops always, rest in peace, always
Mm,
made sure we felt comfortable that wasn't the case, right? And he
right.
always made sure to have these conversations with us, and so we understand, because we would see certain people at events and stuff, and then as kids, we're all, you guys were superheroes to us, but then we would see some real life stuff, right? Like someone that might be addicted to drugs, or after their event they need a ride, and we're like, we didn't understand. We're like, wait,
Yeah.
like that person like won the event and they don't have a card, like why, like
Right.
how come? And then my dad explaining this to us, like, yo, make sure that you guys could still pursue this dream that you have, right? Traveling and battling and becoming something or someone in hip hop, but there's still other avenues. There's still other things that you need to be.
Yeah.
Like, you being
Yes.
a good popper or a good breaker is not what life is. That's just
No,
part
and
of it.
we need those skills. We need those skills to make our community better.
And I
Like
feel like that's where the
honestly, we
social
need, dude,
aspect
if
is
we had
missing.
people, if we had lawyers and doctors and dentists that we could go see that were part of hip hop, do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because we know, because they still, you don't ever have to leave hip hop. It's a culture, it's a community. It's always there. It's not a 9 to 5. So whatever else you do for your job security, or for you, to feed your family, or whatever your labor is, you can, that's a benefit to hip hop culture. And
Yeah.
that's why, in my opinion, we haven't been able to be like support our culture from within,
Hmm.
because not enough of us have enough resources
Yeah.
personally to do it. And that's basically because everything you just said. And the reality is, when you see people get old and it get to the point of not being able to do this, and they don't have anything else to do or fall back on, that's really whack, man.
It
And
hurt.
so
It
Yeah.
hurt.
that, yeah, I don't feel like, I think too, that's something that I realized as an educator, that especially when we teach the youth these things, what we're really teaching them is, we're not trying to make them the best popper or
Mhm.
the best b-boy or b-girl. What we realize is, what they're learning through hip hop and these art forms is going to enrich their lives.
Mhm.
It's going to make them a better version of who
It's a
they
tool.
are.
It's a
Yeah.
That's the bigger picture.
yeah.
They are going to learn about trust, accountability, teamwork, showing up. They're going to learn things that they haven't gotten from whatever reason in life.
Yeah.
And we can fulfill that. And so, us being able to be consistent and do that, again, because I used to think, man, I wanted, like, I used to go hard with these kids, like, I just want to make them the best little b-boys and b-girls.
Yeah.
That was my vision. And after a while, I started realizing that's not even what this is about, man. It's actually way deeper than that. And then when I did realize that, I became a better teacher,
Mm.
because I became more centered and focused on the bigger picture
Yeah.
of it all. So I became more accountable in what I was doing and the way I would show up and the way I was living. Because I was like, well, if they're looking at me at the end of the day, and if I'm like this with them, but then I'm like over here, smoking these blunts and drinking these brews with the crew, like, what is that? How is that? Do you know what I mean? And I don't judge
Mhm.
anybody for none of that, but I made some decisions in my own life because I didn't want to have to be two different people. You know what I mean? That's stressful. And so I was like, let me just really be who I want to be. And I'll pray to God and ask Him to help remove the things I don't want to be anymore. And He'll help me. And He did. You
No,
know what
thank
I
you
mean?
for saying that really because that's something even as myself like uh, I had to sacrifice a lot being that being so young and getting I tell people all the time
Right.
dancers ain't famous, we get popular. That's all it is. It's like you get popular. And
Right.
me being so when our name was booming and everything, and like I had to make that decision like yo, like I could get more followers if I just post myself smoking weed acting a fool all the time, but like
Mm.
that's not who I want to be. And that's like I am gonna have these interactions with the younger people, and I do want to be involved in my community, and I feel like I'm gonna have this mask on, and I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
double
Yeah.
life. And that's even more stressful, and that's what
Right.
happens to a lot of dancers is that
Yes.
they're living the double life, right? They come into
Yeah.
the dance community and they like, okay, I have to like put on this facade and pretend that like all I do is train and like all I do is this and like yeah,
Right.
I don't work. Like what do you mean? I don't have a job. Like I just
Right.
dance. And then they go into the real world and they're not as prepared for it, and then life hits you real hard as you get older. And I also wanted to ask, like, do you feel that this, especially with how the dancing is now, being so egotistical and egocentric and like all about contests, is this what do you feel pushes away women from the scene? Because even though there is
Mm.
women like this, I know it's us men,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot more uh, present, in our mentality and how we carry ourselves.
Right.
Do you feel like that's what? Because before I used to see so much more women in the scene. It wasn't like a lot, right? It wasn't
Wow.
like we seen half and half. But I remember coming up, there was a lot more women in the scene participating. And
Mm.
now, when you go to an event, like if you have two or three women who are
Are
battling,
in it. Yeah.
you're like, oh, that's a lot.
I think that it's the visibility, you know what I mean? For women, for us, it's always about the less visibility we have, the less numbers you're going to have in it.
Mhm.
So it's always been about the lack of visibility of women that do it, period. And then it's also too that, this idea of these safe spaces that's becoming a lot more part of the conversation is really going to hopefully change things for the better, because
Yeah,
I think that we're entering a time where women ultimately, we want to be seen as peers.
yeah,
We want to be seen as peers. We're really tired of feeling objectified in the sense where, if I'm at the practice, I'm at the jam, like, that I'm just automatically like assuming that, or these guys are assuming that, that I want them to hit on me, or that I want this to happen, and I think that that era, it needs to change. And once it does change more, I think we're going to be in a better situation for women, because I think women in general want safe spaces. We want to feel, um
Explain what a safe space is. Like
I-
what?
like a safe space in the sense that if I show up, see, I'm different. My experience has been a little different. I'll be honest. Like, I've always been able to show up looking however I want to look, good or bad, however I'm feeling, sweats or whatever, and just do what I'm there to do. If it's to practice, if it's to jam out, whatever. But I think that I'm different than a lot of women. Women in general, we've been objectified for so long that there's pressure automatically, just how we look showing up somewhere.
Mm,
So if we go to practice, there's different levels of stress, just women getting out the door sometimes, like, and showing up in male dominated spaces. So, um some of the key to it is knowing that these are male dominated spaces, is that the men can be protective rather than, um looking in the sense of that these are potential mates. You know what I mean? A lot of people interdate in the scene. We'll be honest, that doesn't usually go too good.
yeah.
I mean, there's only a few examples where it's actually worked out.
Mm,
And me and Smurf, we did a little live about it one day, and we got a pretty interesting response. But we talked about a lot of this just real outwardly. Like, we have to understand that these spaces that we go to, especially like when we start really feeling we're a part of this community and population, these are spaces that I go to and I can vent in, right? Like, if I had a bad day or my family's tripping or whatever, like, I'm just bugging out. I'm doing what I'm doing. Maybe I'm talking about it, maybe I'm not, but I don't have to see all the stuff that I don't want to see there at the place I'm going to.
yeah.
But in a relationship, if you're together and you have an issue, then that's always part of your scene. And so I think it starts with, first off, men taking a protector image of women, period. Like treating us more like your sister than somebody that you would potentially want to date,
Yeah.
because women, we need that. We've been, we're continually, especially in this day and age, like, we're not safe,
Yeah.
and people don't call other dudes out on their behavior. And so I know that things like, this idea even of no easy props, right? Like, we've always embraced this idea of, this is kind of genderless. Hip hop is just about accepting people as they come in and treating people the same, right? And you treat somebody with respect, but you got to earn your props. We give people respect, right? That's just what we learned. That's what we have to do as human beings. I got to acknowledge you, you got to acknowledge me. We got to be respectful. But I'm not going to necessarily give you props. I'm going to have to get to know you and see you and feel your character and see your, and see your dance and see. And then, if that's what's going to get you your props, right? That hard work part. Well, women, we want the same experience. But the difference is that 90s kind of like tough love, like, oh, I'm going to treat her like the homie. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? No, we don't want to be treated like how you treat your boys. We still want to be protected. We still want to be, considered like, if we step in, you guys are going to protect us if somebody's trying to treat us disrespectfully, or they're trying to get at us in a way where we're not feeling comfortable,
Hmm.
or you know what I mean? There's inappropriate behavior, stroking, touching, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you can tell, like, dang, you know what I'm saying? Like, homie shouldn't really be doing that.
'Cause
And
that's
this
what
is
I was
really
gonna
hard.
ask you
This
too.
is hard for the older generation. It's
Yeah.
hard for them because
Yeah.
they're already, you know what I mean, working with a different set. But I mean, at least for our generation, my era is having a little hard time with it too. But again, we're trying to, it's a lot of it's education, because we just came up differently, so we accepted behavior differently as normal, when we realized, like, no, this isn't really, we don't want this to be normal for this. I don't want that to be normal for my daughter. I don't want
Mhm.
it to have to be normal for your daughter, Kid Boogie. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, I want them to feel safe. I want them to know that if they're coming to a practice or a jam, like, they're going to be embraced, they're going to be feel safe, they're going to be made to feel a part of it. And they're going to come out of it in a positive experience, rather than, man, I'm not going to go back because, man, I feel like danger. I feel like I can't get back to my car without worrying about something, or I'm worried that, and the other part of it is the after party, like that, that behavior that happens outside of the jam, when you see all of us in our other way, you know what I'm saying? And that's kind of like dead too, because that's not healthy. Is it healthy really that we're going to go get mad faded and treat each other like, like bitches and hoes and this, that, and the third, excuse my language, but that's the point. We don't want to have these two parallel things happening. It's not that used to be cool. It's not really cool anymore.
Yeah.
So it takes us understanding, look, we want to be sober because when we're not sober, we don't really have control over what we're doing. And we're not even maybe even going to remember it. So we just have to understand that it all starts with friendship. So no matter what, it's not like a rule book like you people can't date in the scene, but it's like build friendships. Let's encourage friendships with people. And if those two people want to take that, in another direction, then by all means, but build those friendships so that you can really get to know the person, because we're not all that healthy outside of our dances. Like you might see amazing dance come out of people, but as human beings, we're a lot of us are have a lot of trauma, and unfortunately that comes out in relationships.
Yeah, especially within the dance scene or any scene when we usually
Yeah.
interact, doing what it is we're practicing. It's like we take so much time practicing the dance, but not practicing on how to be a better person or how to
Yes.
understand people more. But I also wanted to ask, because say like someone for me, because I'm constantly in these conversations and listening, right? That's
Hmm.
I think another big thing us men need to do more, right? Is just sit down and listen. And
Hmm.
but I always hear it's like it sounds to me that okay, what women are saying is treat us equal in a sense, right? Like we are not above or below. We are human beings, and the same way you would interact with so and so that's not a woman, interact with us in that way. But then I also hear like kind of what you're saying, like, well, I'm not your homeboy. I don't want you coming up, grabbing me, giving me a nuggie, and be like, punch me in the arm, be like, what's up, fool? Like, so it's like it's very hard, right, for people who don't have the patience to listen to
Hmm.
really understand what it is that women do want in
Got
that
it.
sense. But I wanted to ask as well as like, what do you feel women could do better to help us understand
Yeah.
outside of just like shaming people or like calling
Yes.
them out for
Yeah.
something that they might not understand? Because what tends to happen is like there's also like these I don't know the proper word for it, but what would happen is like there's this community of women who will now blame them not winning something or blame them not getting certain recognition because they're women and it has nothing to do with their skill. Right now, it's like,
Really?
oh,
Really?
it's impossible that I'm whack. Like
Yeah.
it's impossible that I'm whack. It's only I only did an advance because I'm a girl, and then it's
Really?
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
especially within popping, this happens a lot, right? And it's like, oh well, they put me against like the best guy, and it's like you almost in this as a male, like we're in this impossible position. It's like, wait, what do I do? Like, do I treat her like every other popper? Which us we do, but I'm saying like for general people who don't understand, it's like they have a difficult time because then they're like, I don't know, do I put the girls against each other? And then
Right.
it's like, oh, well, why are you putting me against a girl? Then it's like, okay, I'm gonna put him against Kid Boogie. It's like, oh, see, it's because I'm a girl. They put me against Kid Boogie, And it's like, well,
Right.
like so for what? Yeah,
Well, if you're gonna compete, you just have to understand, you gotta roll with it. I mean, you're never gonna know who you're gonna have to battle, period. It's just accountability. I think that in general, um, you know, when I say don't treat us like your homie, I just mean in the sense that, with your homies, you kind of joke around and, we sometimes we do some little subtle disses and stuff, like whatever, there might be some things. But I think with women, again, on our end, you know, we have to understand what triggers men too. You know what I mean? So, this idea, sometimes I see this and I kind of trip out, like a woman will be at the jam and we gotta close the way they are because it's the jam, but then we'll change up in the bathroom real quick, like 30 minutes before, and dress in something totally different, kind of like a dress or something like we're gonna go to the club in, and then we'll just hang out at the
yeah,
gym like that the rest of the time. And to me, I mean, again, I think it again, we just have to remember what triggers one another. We want to bring the best out of each other. If I know that men can be triggered by what I'm wearing, I'm going to put that into accountability for myself. And I think that it's not like, oh, I'm going to dress however and just be like, no, I wanted I again, we're a community. We're coalescing, we're coming together. So we have to really big up our strengths, and our weaknesses we don't want to play into. So, We don't want to use our sexuality to create a problematic situation. I think that's it as well. That's where some of our accountability comes in. Hey, sorry. And we don't want to we also don't want to put ourselves in a situation that could be dangerous. And that's just, again, like going home with somebody you don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
um Again, we just got to be safe. Women, we just got to be safe. It's different. It's really different being a woman than it is being a man, period. I
Yeah.
mean, things happen to women, I just read like this whole thing with Lyft and Uber, and it got me thinking, like, I ain't gonna take no Lyft and Uber anymore.
Yeah.
I never even really got that scared, but now I'm just like, man, this is crazy to think that I could be hiring a service and potentially be getting raped or sold
Yeah, that
into a
shit's
sex
crazy.
trade. I mean, imagine you need transportation for your mom or your sister or somebody, your girlfriend. I mean, that come on, man. So we just, in general, we just really need to protect women and girls,
Yeah.
period. We need to stop overly sexualizing them at a young age. We need to let them grow and feel safe. And it just takes work on both of our ends. And I think in hip hop, we should try to be the model community. We really should. We really strive to do that. We strive to just be, let's be real. Let's be real with one another, and hold each other accountable. You guys hold me accountable. I'm gonna hold you accountable. Hold
Yeah.
these women accountable. Let them know. Speak to us authentically. We want to be spoken to authentically, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to speak to you authentically. And if somebody lost because they weren't as good as the next person, we got to be able to say that and accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can't accept it, that's okay too. But let's not go around the truth. There's only one truth. So
Here,
we
here,
don't want to hide it.
here's the thing though. Like, I kind of feel like a lot of us men in this day and age have to be careful what we say around women because of fear of getting canceled. So,
Mm,
so even with, like, let's say the girl was whack, right?
hmm.
And she lost, and she's like, why did I lose? And you're like, oh, you're whack. Now, for some reason, oh, Kid Boogie doesn't like women. He does this, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? Like that
But you're
fear
not
of,
saying you're whack though, because you're not saying they're whack. You're just saying you just didn't. I mean, the person did better than you, and here's why. That's why we can always back it up. We
no, but
always get people to ask.
no, I know.
So what do you
I
mean?
see what you're saying, but some people just don't have the patience to be like, yeah, well, this is how you, especially at a jam, like you got a bunch of people asking you, like, yo, how, why, what, and
Right.
some people are just like, yeah, you were whack, like, just go practice. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like,
mm, mm.
they just
Right.
brush you off sometimes. It's happened to me.
Right.
I've gone to some of the OGs, as, yo, how come I lost? Oh, you're whack, bro. Go practice. All right.
Right.
But,
That's
but
that's hard facts. That's hard. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
in this day and age, us men, like, if we kind of say something like this to a
Hmm.
girl, like, there's a fear of, like, oh man, like, they're gonna think I don't like women now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
The harsh criticism. What, like, I feel like what's happening a lot is that there is, let's say, there is some of these people who are in these judging positions or positions of power, and
Hmm.
whenever they are brutally honest with, let's say, a woman, it does come off like, oh, okay, he's sexist. He has
Hmm.
he has he has a lot of learning to do. And I'm not talking about, a dude who is gonna talk to a woman and, like, be demeaning. I'm talking about, like, someone, like, let's say, who's being very straightforward and talking to her the same way she, like, not even seeing the gender,
Hmm.
right? Being straight up, like, you're a dancer and this is my criticism for you.
Hmm.
And now there's like this, oh, you have to kind of tippy toe and walk on eggshells because this person might go and post on Facebook or Instagram that
Yeah,
you do not like women,
That's
and all
that's
you
ho-
told them.
that's hard. You're right. That's really hard. Again, it's just accountability. If you're using language with them that you're comfortable of being held accountable for,
Yeah.
then that's all I could suggest. Because yeah, if it's going to be thrown back at you, you just need to be able to defend yourself based on, well, this is what I said. Yeah, I'm comfortable with what I said, and I stand by it. And just always be, just again, we live in an age where we're trying to not do any more damage to anybody, right?
yeah,
You got to remember, a lot of people are holding on to a lot of pain, and it's a lot of it's coming out now. There's a lot of triggers. So we just got to treat people like extra, with extra amount of love, I think, during this time. And really, and I remind myself of that, because I get I'll get vexed, man. I really will. I have to pray a lot of it out because I'll just feel like frustrated. Like I'll hear something or something will hurt me or something. And I'll just automatically just want to like, you know, kind of come at people with, or even the day, I'll want to greet the day with an attitude or a way of anger or a way of, and I just remind myself like I'm always supposed to counter everything with love. Always got to counter it with love because if you can counter with love, and then you can and that does take time because you might have to tell the person, well, look, man, the reality is, this, that, and the third, but you did really good in this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's like some people do, it's called a compliment sandwich. I heard about it before, and it's like a lot of people need it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I never give it. I wasn't that type of person, but I realized like there's people that suffer from insecurities and things like that. So
Yeah.
when they hear your whack or this, that, and third, it's like, whoa, it takes them to a place that, flips the switch with them and there's no return. But if you can say, hey, this person was stronger in these areas, which basically allowed them to beat you, but you did really, really good in these areas.
yeah.
Let it
No,
lie.
and I
That's
think
a
it's
good
also
way. That
clear
yeah.
like there is a lot more men out there doing the wrong thing than doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Just to make it
Right.
clear, like we're not trying to be apologists for like for men who are that way. It just
Yeah.
for the men who are trying to do better, there is this impossible position that we're kind of seeing ourselves in, right? And
Well, you guys do have to kind of work with each other though.
yeah,
I think that's what it is. I think what it is again, it's intergenerational because again, you only know what you were raised with and what you witnessed, and we all come from a way different dynamic of than like this generation currently, and how that um what they're asking for and what they're putting forth and what they're showing us is like, hey, this doesn't feel right and here's why, or
mm,
this feels we want to change this kind of proletarian power structure, right, or this patriarchal model. And again, it's an oppressive, it's not it's coming outside of hip hop. We know that it's
yeah,
been around
Mhm.
forever, but it always filters into everything else. So we have to always look at that and just remind ourselves we want to do better. And so how can we do better? A lot of it is even in ourselves, changing some behaviors, obviously, and with our boys changing some behaviors, and checking each other a little bit on some stuff. And it's hard to check your boys, it really is. But and your girls and your friends, but you kind of have to. We need that because with the whole thing what happened with legs, it really uncovered that we have a problem with understanding a proper behavior in
yeah.
general. The first thing all the dudes did was like they went and they all thought like, dang, I sent pics like that, or I've done this and that. That's the first thing a lot of people thought. So there was that, but it's also too that there was a fear. And so
Mhm.
instead of the fear of being exposed created a silence with the men,
Yeah,
instead of what the women and the community were more after, which is that let's be accountable for what we've done. And you don't have to say names, but you know what? It would have, what would have been really different is if instead of, if we could rewind that and it all would have gone down differently, that a lot of men would have come to the forefront and been like, I've done, I've communicated inappropriately with women. I've done things now that I realize like wasn't a good way to do it. And I'm really going to learn and I want to do things a better way now. Cause again, like the blessings that we're working with is that we don't have a community of people that are trying to sue everybody.
yeah.
There are communities like that. We're not like that. Nobody's even trying to sue Crazy Legs.
Hmm.
you know, he's lucky. He could have handled this a whole different way. He could have been like, "Yo, as a figurehead of this community, like I apologize, man.
Yeah.
I got to work this out. This isn't right. You're right." And I'm kind of ashamed now. Now that I realize it, I'm ashamed and I want to
Yeah,
do better and I'm going to work to do better.
yeah.
And,
That's
and
very
that's all you can do. But to not do that is saying you don't care about your community.
yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
care. Nobody's trying to sue you. All people wanted to hear was like that you cared about what people were bringing forward.
Hmm.
So I think in general that speaks more to people that people can just be not realize like, look, you don't have to be afraid of somebody exposing you. You need to be accountable for understanding that what you did was wrong at the time, and moving forward,
And
like
willing to work,
we're
willing
gonna
to
do
work on
better.
it. Yeah,
Right, that's all we can do. I mean,
Hmm.
honestly, that's all we could do, any of us. We've all done wrong, we've
yeah,
all done stuff that we're not proud of.
yeah,
And but it takes a different kind of person to basically be like, yo, you know what I'm saying, like I know I it's hard for me to understand this new movement, but I'm going to do better, and I want to try harder, and I'm going to be listening more, and I'm hopefully going to be able to be teaching, this next generation of men, how to really how to communicate better with women, and how to have healthier relationships with women, just like
Well,
we as women are trying to hold space for women in that same regard, and have those communications. And because honestly, like, I've never been one that's been in those type of spaces, but now that I am, and I'm hearing what's coming forth, I really realize, I'm like, man, these women have been hurt.
yeah,
They've
yeah,
been hurt, yo. I mean, you're talking about, they've been hurt by men, and
yeah,
they don't want to be hurt anymore, especially by the community that they're supposed to be a part of. Whether or not those are the people that hurt them, they don't want to feel like this community doesn't care about that, and that this is a community that protects that type of thing. That's why when people went on and said, Dizzy, went on, and Smurf for a minute went on and said, well, what he did wasn't that bad. I don't think. No, 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 that's not the proper. You don't align yourself with the person that perpetrated the injustice.
hmm
You
I mean,
don't.
it was
There's
pretty bad on
there's
my
no
in
there's
my
no
point of
point
view.
in aligning, like, regardless of what what you that's gonna be bad for you, and that's why they ended up all retracting those things that
yeah,
they did and said, and they're learning, and that's okay. But we just want to remember, yeah, there's people that, especially women, like, we've been, damaged, and it takes the healing of a community to help make women feel safe.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
And
this is an important
yeah,
thing to say is like it goes back to what you're saying. This is why it's important to be involved in different communities and different things in
yeah,
life, because what tends to happen is you're like, oh, not my community, not what I do. Like
right,
it's not like that. Like, and it's
right.
hard for people to relate what's going on in the world and into their little bubble of, if especially if
Mm-hmm.
that's all they do. I think that's what happens a lot with the men within the dance scene, right? It's like
Yeah,
they spend so much time with just within this scene that they're like, oh no, we would have heard of it already, or like, why didn't they say something earlier? And it's very hard for them to have that perspective of like what goes on in society. Just
mm-hmm.
because we go to a jam doesn't mean that it pauses, right? Like it's
Right,
happening at the jams. It's happening. This is
yeah.
where that the that stuff is happening to women.
And
And
look at a lot of the leaders and the winners of the jam. Look
yeah,
at the stuff they do.
no, you're
How do you think that what kind of message does that send? And
no,
that's why it's super important to, it's less of a calling people out about it, but it's like addressing it. We know that how we really change is through love, right?
mhm.
I'm not going to change if you come at me with hate. I'm
Yeah,
gonna that's gonna freak me out. But if you can, like, if I'm somebody that's damaging people or the scene, and you come at me and you're like, man, I want to talk to you about this, and this is what I've noticed, and I'm concerned, and I want to help you, and
Mm.
I'm here, to help you. I want to help you. And
yeah,
it's honest and true. That's gonna speak volumes.
big
Yeah,
time.
I
That's what
agree.
men and women in that we need to do with inside of our own groups. Like, women really need to work within women, because
Mhm.
it kind of works like that. Men need to work within men,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
because
that's
that's just how it works. And that takes, again, a lot of that, within hip hop. At some point, we started okie doking all types of stuff.
yeah,
We okie dokie whack skills. We okie doked poor behavior, because we didn't want people to call us haters. We didn't want people to say we're negative, or that we didn't want people not to hire us anymore, or whatever else. We have to let all that go and just really function again like accountable people, and be like, well, if they don't hire me, I'm going to have to be okay with that. But I do have to bring this to the attention, and I want to be accountable, and I want to help them be accountable.
yeah,
And we have to hold one another accountable. If we don't, we've learned that in our government system. We learned that with everything.
mhm,
Accountability is so important, man.
yeah,
And when the people can't hold, the government accountable and other people and institutions accountable, we don't have our power anymore. Then
Yeah.
we just really have to suffer. And so it's doing it, but remembering and reminding ourselves when we wake up, we're going to do it with love. I'm going to still do this with love. Let me take a breath. Let me take some space. Let me take a nice walk to clear my head, to see and figure out how I'm going to go about this and not just go react on the pad. I'm not going to react on my keypad. I'm not going to react. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to come up this with love. I'm going to think about it for a little bit, and then I'll make that move, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what happens as well is like a lot of people when they hear about, 'cause especially now this whole accountability thing, right? This word is being used a lot more than ever,
Hmm.
and especially within the men, because the men, I would say, we are having a lot less conversations with each other than let's say the women are now,
Hmm.
and they were like, oh well, it's like oh, I can't tell someone who I look up to anything, but it's like no, it's having accountability doesn't necessarily mean like scolding someone. Like it's
Right.
having conversations and being able to really start this dialogue to understand. Like obviously we can never you know by understanding that doesn't mean accepting someone's bad behavior. That just means
Right.
it's a start, right? It's being able to
Yep.
go, okay, this is what's happening, and this is why you might see it more with this age group than this other age group,
Right.
or
Right.
you know, this group of people more than this other group. And us as men, we need it, like you said it perfectly. Like men need to start having conversations with men and really
Yes.
getting down to like what we need to do better, and also as men, we need to. I feel understand that okay yes in any movement there's going to be people who take advantage of it and use it as a way
Hmm.
to like benefit their own personal agenda, and we can't use the women who are doing that with it within this new movement that's going on, the ones who are like not doing it that have their own agenda and use that as a way to be like that's what we're going to point at and say why we don't believe that we you know all men are guilty or men are guilty of this and that. No, let's look at the ones who are handling it in a positive way or in a way that is effective
Yep.
and use them as the example, because I think
Right. No,
human
you're right.
nature
And there's
always use the
there's
bad example, right, and be like oh I don't want to do it because of the worst possible example, but
right.
let's look at who is being effective and whether if it suits you or not. Like it's not really about for, especially with what we're talking about
Hmm.
men, it's not about if it suits us or not, but what I'm saying that to say like don't automatically point out what you don't like. Look at what you do like about these this you know movements or people who are
Hmm.
having these conversations and take from it and learn, because regardless if you're doing it or not, we have a lot to learn. Like
Yes.
that's the point, right? Like
Changing behavior is not overnight. It
mhm,
takes steps, but it does take education. It does take understanding, and then it takes the feeling of like, man, I get it now. I get the 2 plus 2. I now I since I understand, I can actually walk differently. I can present myself differently and realize like there's going to be people in our communities that come at us sideways and call us out and say things that or try to present things in a way that it's kind of like all or nothing, which isn't realistic either. We're not like robots like that, like
yeah,
and there's I've heard some of the conversations that I'm just like, y'all is, a little overboard sometimes. But I think we just, again, we know what we're working with. We know who our community is and we know
mhm,
what to do. So we don't have to worry about, some of these people that are just feeling like everything has to be done a certain way, or this is the only way, or these are the only people that can do it. It's not really like that. It's
yeah,
it's actually like, but we definitely need to put in the work, and it does come in from being a part of different groups and things, so we can learn about the other side. That's everything.
yeah. And I guess like lastly, just on this topic, we're about to wrap it up. I know it's been a couple
My
hours.
cat is he's about to he's gonna climb up my head in a minute.
Yeah, I know.
Gotta feed him in a sec because he's
Yeah,
tripping
yeah,
out.
yeah. We're almost there.
Bad boy.
We're almost there. Just two more things. I guess the last
Sure.
thing I want to ask about this topic is judging, right? Like
Hmm.
what I tend to see as an event promoter and someone that's constantly trying to show this equality and provide it is they'll be
Hmm.
like, oh well, and when I say that I mean people in general, not just women or men. Just people in general who are observing, they'll be like, "Oh, why aren't there more women judges?" Right? And then let's say
Hmm.
you do out of three judges, you'll have one person who is a woman who's judging.
Hmm.
But they're like for us, for example, we choose our judges based on what they've done, not who they are, not just necessarily what gender they are, right? So it's like
Right.
what you have accomplished. If I have a legend of the dance, and then I have two people who've been dancing for 4 years right beside them. For us, that doesn't necessarily sit well, just to fill in space. And
Hmm.
what I feel like some women have a hard time understanding, the ones who do want to have a hard time understanding it, is that um, just because this now there's this movement of equality really happening, that we're not going to just place any women in these positions just for the sake to say, oh well, we're trying to treat everyone equal, because I feel like that's also being dishonest and not doing justice for women. And like, because yeah, so I guess my point is what I'm trying to say is like, what do you feel we could do as even just event organizers, whether you're a woman or not, to make people understand that just because you have like not there's not as many women as there is men, right, in these positions of like being veterans. So it's
Hmm.
a lot harder. Like for every 10 men I could pick, there's probably one woman that I could pick, right, that could fit these qualifications that we might have as an event. And
Hmm.
but it seems like that's hard for people to accept out, and it's not saying that we're saying that it's right that there's more men than women, but that's
Hmm.
the reality. Like if I have Asia one on my judging panel, for me it's disrespectful to you to have someone who doesn't even have half of your experience sitting right next to you just for the sake of having more women than men. So as a woman, like, what do you feel us as an event organizer or event or people who throw events could do to like combat that? Because I know it's kind of a question that's going around, but
Right.
it's just hard because it's like there there is women who are super dope. They're still putting in work, just like there's men putting in work. But
Hmm.
for me, there's not as many in that position of like being a vet. Like there's not 10 Asia 1s, right? Like as for example, there's like 10 Crazy Legs. Like for you could
Hmm.
find a lot more people who are dancing at the same time as Crazy Legs with similar um with similar what I'm trying to say
Accomplishments.
accomplishments. Yes, with
Hmm.
similar
Hmm.
accomplishments. Like
Hmm.
we with our event, when we put anyone in that position, we're putting people who have been there, people who have done it, people who have the experience, and
Hmm.
we're not gonna just put a bunch of women on the panel just to shut people up. And like, what do you feel as not only as a woman but a leader in hip hop and a leader in event organizing, that we could do, I guess, to like to make it better, or like
Hmm.
what exactly do we do? You know, like that.
Well, look, I mean, so the promoter is responsible for the judges. You know what I mean? The promoter is responsible for the image set forth of their event based on the judges. So whatever your mission is that you're accomplishing, it could be different depending on the event you're having. Like you might have an event where you invite community members to judge that are outside of the dance world. I mean, it's been done before. I don't know if I agree with that, but there's people that have done that. I think as long as you as an organization understands what your comfortability is with that, as far as what image you're presenting, that goes hand in hand with your organization's mission. But I also think that with things like so with things like popping, because you're in the best place to be for that, as far as for judges, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You're in the backyard, the mecca of for popping. You have I can already name probably 7 women, starting with Tony Basil and moving onward to somebody like a Medusa, to Anna Sanchez, to um, um,
We're talking about popping, right?
right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Tony
you,
Basil wasn't a popper. She's a locker.
yeah, but still, I mean,
See here.
Tony Basil's, and again, whatever. What the point I'm trying to make is that and then there's people like um, I think her name's I don't know, it's not Lady Boogaloo, some Boogaloo. I don't know. I think she's from Long Beach, but I've been learning about a couple of these other women that I'm learning more about. But I think that there's not a ton of women, but there's some women out there that definitely understand this dance
Yeah.
and have the historical legitimacy to really be judging. And I would think Tony Basil could probably be a person like that, even though, she's busy. I mean, but I mean, I whereas like sometimes with other dance styles it might be harder, but I think that it's important to, obviously try to consider a woman that has those capabilities. And again, if it's virtual, you might have even more access to women from different places that, that also understand this dance well. Even people like uh, Wiggles's sister, forgetting her. I think her name's Deanna. Like she's an incredible dancer. Like she definitely understands popping. Like for sure, for sure. So there's people that again have that that sometimes people just don't think about. And obviously when we're looking at a global perspective, you have a lot more reach in terms of who you could ask if it's a virtual. But I think that if you think outside of the boundaries of your mind in terms of what makes somebody a credible judge, if you're really looking at do they really understand the dance, which is to me the first and foremost. I'm not looking at it so much as if they were the best at it or
Yeah.
they were da 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 da. I want somebody that I know really understands the elements of those dances and can and
And that can do it,
also
right? They
and
could.
also well, whether they could now or they used to whatever, or they are someone as well that can that's of sane, mind and judgment, that can explain why this person would have won over this person. Maybe, to remind the judges, hey, take a few notes here and there, because you're going to be asked possibly by them. I always get people that ask that. So I do take a few notes here and there while I'm judging. And I think it is my responsibility to explain to somebody if they don't understand. I should be able to. That's why if my memory is not that great, I will take some notes. And at the end of the day, yeah, be try to be as inclusive as you can, but at the same time, you know, that's what you have to work with. I think that there could be a lot more OGs judging. I think that, yes, are they Zoom savvy? I'm not sure. That might take a little work. It might even
Yeah.
be, and it might even build a bridge. You might even say, look, would you mind coming over here?
Yep.
I could put you in front of the screen and the computer and I'll
We
get you
gotta do
dinner,
that.
whatever. What I mean? OGs are different and be like,
Done that already.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? If you have to do that, sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that if you've got OGs in there, on your judging panel, especially with popping, you're doing right
And what
because
surprises a lot of people, though, well,
Mhm.
I think what surprises a lot of people, especially women,
Uh-huh.
is that a lot of women say no. Like
Okay,
we've
sure.
asked a lot, and but that's the thing is like, and then you have people who want to judge or want to post something to make it
Mhm.
seem like something that it's not. When in reality, we don't have to explain that someone said no because they might not
Mhm.
even want people to know their personal stuff
Right.
that's going on. But like understand that yes, as a community, there's a lot of things we're working on to
Mhm.
change this, and that's what
Right.
we hope for. Because it is whack when we're like, damn, like we want to get all women judging panel, and then we're like going down the list, and then like it's like this person said no, this person said they're busy, and then now it leaves one person. Like for one
Right.
of our events recently online, we try to get all women, and the women we asked, all of them said no, but one, and then
Mhm.
it was like damn, like that sucks because it kind of ruined the idea that we had that we were trying to present. But then
Right.
there's people that think that no one's trying, and I just want people to understand that there
Well,
is.
just make sure before you present that you can do. I mean, that's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I've noticed that too. Sometimes our minds, we think, oh, this should be easy. So we're like, yeah, check out this dope concept. And then you're like, yo, I can't get nobody that
Nope.
knows how to do that. Or
Yeah, yeah,
dang.
no, yeah,
So we learn as promoters. But yeah,
Here's,
just the haters, if you come across a post, just answer it as accountable as you can and keep moving on,
cool.
you know?
here's
Don't
another
let it
question I have for
yeah.
you with the same kind of like in the same category.
Yeah.
What is your advice to the woman coming up nowadays, what
Mm-hmm.
is your advice for them to be able to get in that position as a judge
Mm-hmm.
or as a teacher? Like
Mm-hmm.
what can you give them? Like what advice can you give them? Like, oh, you should do this, you should be doing that,
Mm-hmm.
put in work, go to events, like, just what what is your advice to them?
Well, to be a teacher is different, but I think teaching is something that some people are good at and some people just aren't. I
Yeah,
think it's almost like a born skill,
I
but I
agree.
think you can learn to develop it if it's something that you're interested in doing. But that definitely comes with understanding the history of something. It really does,
I
because we
agree.
realize like what we're really trying to show is what something came out of and why it looks the way it does because of it. Because if we could do that, people can learn it better.
I,
I can even do that with something like popping or locking, even if I don't do those dances super well, because
yeah,
I can help them connect the dots and to help them understand why it looks like this and this is what they're trying to achieve, right? Um, so as far as the as judging, I mean, judging's a different ball game because to be a judge, you definitely have to be as objective as possible, and that's hard. And if you're someone who is overly concerned about pleasing people, or you get intimidated by individuals or situations, or your own crew, for example, or what have you, you wouldn't want to be a judge, because you're going to be put in situations where you're going to be judging a member of your crew versus someone else, and you have to put on that objective lens as much as you can and be able to back why you judge the way you did.
yeah,
And so that's just I would say, as far as with judging, that there's people that are just not ready for that, based
yeah,
on they're too in the mix still. They're too concerned with pleasing people, or they're too, they know the pressures of being in a crew and what that means to them. So they might not be in the right position currently to be a judge, but if they do meet that criteria and they can handle that type of pressure and the responsibility and be accountable to how they judge and why publicly, then they could be a judge, you
Yeah.
know?
Word. All right. Thank you, Asia. That's so much knowledge, so much history. We appreciate it. Let us know where people could reach you, what you got going on currently. How could the community support what you have going on? And yeah, just any last words.
Well, my main thing right now is I am working, of course, with No Easy Props. And we are right now, our biggest thing that we're doing in this pandemic is we're pushing out our um, virtual youth program called the LAIC Dance League. It's the Inner City Youth Dance League. And this idea for this actually came about, something that I wrote years ago, for an idea to create a dance league in the Parks and Rec. And so it didn't get materialized then, which was about 15 years ago. But I was able to make the right relationships with the housing authority, and or the agencies that work through them to provide resident services, and say, hey, would you be willing to let us create a dance league at some of these housing projects and go and service the youth there, and using a more of a coach approach, right,
Yeah.
into teaching and team building and things like that, and having a big team that's having fun dancing, showcasing, then a smaller team that's the competitive team. And we got the go ahead, and then the pandemic hit, so we turned it virtual. And then we decided, well, it's just virtual for all kids right now. So you can check that out on our IG or on our website. Our IG is at noeasyprops.org. And that's a great resource for youth right now, because it's basically for like ages like 9 and up, school age. And it's a lot of fun. It's more of like a clubhouse vibe. I'm on there, and Grems is on there, and we always have special guests on there as well. So we'll be building with the young people. We do some graffiti lessons as well, and we talk about a lot about the music. We play a lot of different music for them that they haven't heard, and then we create dances to the music, and it's pretty fun. They enjoy it, and they get to know each other, and then they're dancing with one another, and so it's just something for them to do right now. It's kind of like, hey, their own thing. Like, hey, Mom, I'm going to go over to the icy dance league right now, and they turn it on and they check in, and the ones that want to dance with their camera on do, and the ones that don't, and we just have a good time together. So
Yeah.
that's every Tuesday and Thursday from 5 to 6 Pacific Standard Time, but it's open to any youth. So if anybody's interested, just have your mom or your dad or your parent, guardian, or if you're like a youth program person or probation person, you can reach out to us and we'll give you the link. And it's fully supervised. We're all background checked.
Awesome.
It's a safe space. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like my main thing right now. I'm just doing that and working on a project. We're actually working on something that's coming out next month, which is the LA Funk and Soul series. And it's a 6 episodic event that is made into videos that really talks about the history of funk and soul dance in LA and in Northern Cali, and we feature different groups and individuals, and it's really them shaping the narrative. We don't shape the narrative. It's not like our take on the history or anything.
Yeah.
It's the individuals that have been chosen to be a part of it, that want to be a part of it, that talk about things, that they share little memorabilia items, and we share some footage, so it's pretty cool. We're that's a little side project that we have going on. We have one for every month for the next 6 months, and we are also, like I'm working as part of this legacy advisor group for this Olympic task, and it is, boy, is it a task right now.
I bet.
I don't have much to say about it other than our thing is we formed ourselves. We were
Yeah.
not formed. We formed ourselves, which is what we have to remember to do in hip hop. If we're worried about something or we're invested or we want to be part of something, we don't wait. We form ourselves and we step to them and say, "Look, what's up? We're willing to help out with this." You know what I mean? Let us be a part of this, because, and that's kind of what we've had to do because it's been kind of insulated. And so there's not a lot to report right now other than there's some events happening to qualify for just a national US team that wouldn't necessarily be an Olympic team yet, but it would be to compete nationally for the US for other things that would be kind of worldwide events and things like that. So we'll try to we're right in the thick of it, trying to suss stuff out and try to keep things keep parties coming together positively, which is very hard in hip hop. And we're trying to remind people that this oppressive mentality that we've always been under, we can't keep using it. So there's a new model and a new way of doing business. There's a new way of having meetings. There's just a new way of things. And we're just saying, with all these things happening, we don't want to keep using this old system that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Um, so that's that. And we also, another project that I'm working on that I really feel is important is this United Hip Hop Vanguard.
Yeah.
And that you can check out the IG. It's at United Hip Hop Vanguard. And that is something that we've been working on for a year now. And it's in response to the killings of George Floyd and other people. And it really kind of, what we figured out is we said, man, what are we doing in hip hop? How are we combating racism? How are we combating inequality? What can we do in our own scene and culture? So all this stuff we're talking about right now, even on your podcast, all is things we talk about all the time there. Anybody's invited to check that out, to check out a meeting. To it's an organization. It's not a business. It's not like a business of any kind at this point, but it's something that where people are starting to move forward and regionally to basically, create a more authentic hip hop culture, to create a more accountable hip hop culture, and to create a better space for Black people, brown people, women, people that have been a little bit marginalized in hip hop, only because, again, of racism in general, of just the world. And us saying in hip hop, we're going to do better to create more opportunities here. We're going to do better to create more learning and more make sure the narrative and history of hip hop is always presented and the people of that narrative and history. So that's kind of the objective with the United Hip Hop Vanguard. And it's pretty awesome. I know it did stimulate a popping vanguard and some other things. And kind of at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be separated, but a lot of times there will be meetings that are more condensed and related to the popping community or to the graffiti community or to this or that, but it's just one really larger collective of people that just want to help create hip accountability in hip hop, and something that's better than what we've been doing, which is really create more culture again, kind of make sure these competitive events, that the culture is balanced in there
Mm.
and it's presented. And that's something that was almost like one of the biggest missions that we realized. And then leaning forward, it's always to remember that because we live in a racist society and world,
Mhm.
we always have to address racism
Yeah.
because it's pretty much a part of everything everybody deals with every day.
Yeah.
So we always have to remind, the work we do is what's great is it's all coalescing, because no matter if it's the B Girl Collective, or it's United Hip Hop Vanguard, or if it's No Easy Props, or if it's the Great 180ers, or if it's USA Breaking, it's all eventually kind of one pool and stream, right? So we don't want to reinvent. We want to find ways for this stream to run together. And because it runs together, we always have to deal with that root of racism and oppression, because until that's done, we're always going to be at a disadvantage
Mm.
every time we're dealing with any of this. So it's something that we always just have to be cognizant of, that in our program and our portfolio, that we're looking at that and we're addressing it. Because and it's not our fault that we don't, because we live in this like colonialized way. So we've been taught to think differently, but we have to undo that by always remembering, even front and center, even with USA Breaking, they're probably like, well, why are they bringing up this racism stuff? Because if we don't create a platform that's different, it's going to exist here too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you guys are already making this just a studio pipeline. When what about these kids in the projects? What about these kids in the valley? What about these other kids? Like, how are they going to be a part of this if they can't afford to go take these studio classes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's so that's why and again, the beauty of it is it creates a simple way to realize, okay, at the end of the day, even though we might be working in different facets, we're all doing the same good work,
Mhm.
as long as we remember to keep that part of it and the accountability part of it, because those are the parts that oversee everything. And so that's really it. That's all I'm really working on. you know at the summit, it keeps going. It'll keep remanifesting
Yeah.
itself each year with something different, right? So it will happen. I mean, it probably will happen in the summer. And it's always my hope and dream that we can have it live and things will be cool. And if we
Yep.
can't, maybe we can push it to fall. And if that still can't happen, then maybe we can do what we can do, how we can do it.
We
So
gotta all get together and buy an island, a private island.
ooh, man.
So Asia, the website is noeasyprops.com.
Noeasyprops.org.
.org. All right.
Mhm.
Everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Asia
Thank
West,
y'all.
the legend.
Thank
Um,
you, Great One Aiders, for the work you guys are doing. We
thank you.
see you, we feel you, we're a part of you. We
Yes.
support you 100. And I appreciate your transparency. And when you don't know something, and the way that you say, look, I don't know this, or this is weird to me, or it's new to me, but you're not afraid to voice it and have those awkward conversations, right? Because that's what it's about. And
Yes.
they are hecka awkward lately. Like,
Yep.
but you know what? At least you're having them,
Yeah. Thank
you
you
know?
so much. We're,
Yeah.
we're learning every day. Every day
Yep.
learning.
That's what we do.
Appreciate
And we're
you.
just trying to do better, right? We
Yes.
could do better, and it doesn't happen overnight, but we all find ways to do better. And, I like that saying, do no more harm,
Mm.
right? I like that. Somebody said that, I think it was Rockefeller, and it just stuck in my head. It's like, yeah, do no more harm, because we can't undo harm, but we could do no more harm.
Yeah.
But it takes thinking about the things we just talked about so we
Yeah.
don't keep doing more harm, right?
No,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's what's up.
Thank you for all this
All right,
time.
y'all. I love you
Yes.
guys.
Yes. Love
Peace
you
and
too,
one
Asia.
love.
Yes.
West
Correct.
Coast, love you guys.
All right. See you,
All
Queen.
right, y'all. Peace.
Peace.